All right, good evening, everybody. I'm Barney Arnold, the Chair of the Select Board, and welcome to our Select Board meeting being held Wednesday, May 4th, 2022. I'll call the meeting to order. And first, we'll have time for community input. Then we will be hearing from the police chief about the candidate for police officer for our town. Then town meeting review. I see Wayne is here. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And an update on the Public Facilities Task Force. We have Christine Lear here, and I think Jerry's maybe joining us online or in person, representing the Public Safety Facilities Task Force. Then we're having an open conversation about regionalization of town services, followed by the town administrator's report, liaison reports, approval of warrant articles, no minutes tonight, and then adjournment. So with that, I will ask if there's anybody either in the room or anybody on the Zoom call who would like to offer a comment during community input. And if you're on the Zoom call and want to comment, you can either turn on your video and just wave your hand, or you can use the chat function. Anyone here in person want to offer anything for community input? All right, well, hearing none, then we'll move on. So I'd like to introduce Police Chief Fisher. Sure, you can use that. Yeah.
So the folks at home can hear?
Yeah, definitely. Move that mic up so it's, yeah, there you go.
Well, good evening, all. Thank you for allowing me to come tonight. So tonight I'd like to respectfully request that you appoint our newest police officer. I'd like to introduce Taylor Collins. Taylor comes to us. He's currently a sergeant at the Bentley University Police Department, where he has 6 years of experience. He has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in criminal justice from Bridgewater State. And he brought his family here tonight, which is super. His official start date, we spoke today, I think will actually be May 18th, so he can provide adequate notice to his current employer. But we're going to be doing a few errands between now and then, getting him ready to roll on May 18th. But with that, I think I'd probably be easiest so folks at home can hear him. If I can have Taylor, can you come up here beside me? And so in any event, I know you know about Mr. Collins because I get to write to you and brag about how excited we are. We had a wide list of applicants for the test. And luckily tonight we have Christine Lear, who's now trying to escape, and Officer Christopher Argoyan were actually two of the three people on the hiring committee. The third person was Detective Carrie Baxter, and she, Chris and Christine facilitated the testing, the written exam, physical fitness, and then of course his and most importantly his interview. So Christine, Officer Argoyan, and Detective Baxter were the three that interviewed him. And it was their strong recommendation that Mr. Collins is number one and that we should hire him. And I too feel that way after spending some time with him. And I think he'll fit well here in Carlisle. Do you have any specific questions for either Mr. Collins or I?
Would you like to say anything to us? I guess I want to call you Officer Collins, but
Yeah.
I'm too early, huh?
No, I'm excited. I brought my family,
Yeah.
and I'm just happy to hopefully I can work here and make a good life for my family and be part of the town. And it seems like it's a great town and kind of a great place to raise kids and hopefully I can bring my values into the town and then absorb some of the values you guys have, and I think it'll be a good fit.
Great.
Then it's my very great pleasure to move that the Select Board approve the recommendation of the police chief to appoint Taylor J. Collins from Shirley, Mass. To serve as a full-time police officer for the Carlisle Police Department.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, well, hearing none. I guess it's just the three of us here in person, so we can do this by voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's
Congratulations.
unanimous.
And
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Congratulations.
You're welcome to stay for a very exciting next portion of our meeting, but we will understand since you have little ones that probably are ready for bed. Oh, good, good. Yeah, really nice to meet you
Very
and your
nice to
family.
meet you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Adorable.
All right, well, we are well ahead of schedule, which is unusual for us. So we are going into a discussion about the town meeting that we had a week ago Monday. Was it really just a week ago? Where am I? Yeah, week ago Monday. Whew. Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
So Wayne, would you like to come up and just sit with us? You don't have to stand, but here's a nice chair on the end. I think Nathan is only going to be with us remotely, so. And that looks like it's on that mic. So anyway, I welcome Wayne Davis, who's our town moderator. And the purpose of this agenda item is to discuss the town meeting and how it went. And Wayne, I'm sure you have some specifics you want to raise, so take it away.
Sure. And I'll just remove my mask to talk. Well, unless that, I'm happy to defer and hear you first. I don't need to go first, but up to you.
Well, my only thought was, well, not only, but one of the things we should discuss is the 6 p.m. start time
Right.
and what our thinking was about how that worked out. But any
Okay.
others on the select board have specific things they want to raise about the town meeting?
Yeah.
Yes,
I was very happy with it,
I was too.
just
Yeah.
well planned and, as well executed. Yep.
And I thought that, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you know me, I'm always bringing up the matter of the quorum, so.
Well, that's related to the 6 p.m. start question, right?
I'm not sure it is.
We
No,
don't
know.
no.
A debate, a discussion of it is related.
Yeah, I do want to just really praise the Board of Health and you, Wayne, for thinking through so carefully how to set up the meeting and make it possible, I think, for everyone who wanted to come to feel comfortable and like they would be able to find a safe place for themselves at the meeting. I thought that worked out very well. And I heard a couple of different people express their appreciation for that. So
Oh, good.
thank you in particular.
I'm glad to hear that. I didn't get any particular feedback, but I'm glad people thought it worked. Okay, then, well, I've got a couple of things, and first was scheduling. So there's actually two aspects. One is the 6 p.m. start time, and the other is doing it the week after school vacation.
There is that.
So first,
Not only the week after, but the Monday.
the Monday after. Monday's been traditional, but we don't have to stick with that. So just on the week after school vacation, it used to be, for as long as I can remember in Carlisle, and then certainly the first 6-8 years that I was moderator, the town meeting would typically be the first week and sometimes even the second week in May. So there was at least a week after school vacation. And we started a couple of years ago moving to April, and I never questioned the select board on why that was. I don't really know. I don't know if anyone remembers. But sort of the practical implication here in Carlisle, we have what is virtually a unique community asset in the mosquito. That, as a recent editorial pointed out, the other towns, as they are losing their newspapers, are looking to the mosquito to see can they reproduce something like that. Apart from anything else, it is just an incredible resource for educating the public about the issues to come up. And also, I think it actually ties into the quorum. The mosquito doesn't publish the week of school vacation.
That's very
So among completely everything else, it's absurd to have to not have the newspaper out on the Friday before town meeting. So I don't know of any compelling reason why it needs to be in April. as
Why did
opposed
we
to-
schedule it for that time?
Like I said, it somehow it slipped from May to April 3, 4, 5 years ago. I never, and it may be, I don't recall whether it was ever immediately the week after, or maybe it was just the way the calendar fell.
That's what I was gonna
But
say, 'cause-
my strong recommendation would be just let's keep it in May, and there be at least a week, if not
Yeah.
You know
two.
what, as I recall, actually, it had more to do with the Concord calendar. I think that's why it started slipping, because there were certain issues that we wanted Concord to vote on first around the school.
No, but that would buy us to
Argue the
later.
other way around.
It's the other way.
Yeah,
That's true.
Concord typically was
They were
earlier
later,
than
and
us
this year we were
anyway.
Before them,
Yeah.
but there's no advantage. to
So, yeah,
Okay,
so anyway, so that would be my strong recommendation.
I
on that.
completely agree. I completely agree.
note to us.
The 6 PM start time, I guess I never understood the logic for it in the first place.
Who brought it up? I don't
thought it
remember
was your
voting on it or
suggestion.
anything.
No?
Um,
This
It
this is
was-
making
Boy, I'll
us
tell you-
sound like
But, you know,
nobody
it's-
was on the ball.
it's
I
the
didn't,
Zoom. It's Zoom.
honestly, I didn't discover it until actually, after the warrant was posted, and I said, wait a second. isn't
There
that
was a discussion at
typo?
one point about an
Yeah.
earlier start time. So there is, I agree, I think it should be later, but there is an argument to be made, okay, that. And lucky for us this year, it was a very short meeting, but typically it's a 4-hour meeting-ish, right?
Yeah.
So if you start at 7, you're pushing to 11. That's pretty late for people. And so if you start at 6, you give yourself, I would say that the overarching goal, in my opinion, would be to try to construct a one-night meeting. By far, for me, the most important thing is to get it all done and not have this Concord style, multi-day thing. So if you accept that, not everybody will, but if you accept that, then you say, well, gee, I really need to block 4 hours to make sure that I can cover these issues. And also there's a, burden is not the right word. There's a responsibility by select board basically, and you to make sure that agenda is not so, to be realistic about the agenda and what you can get done, right? But if you can get it done in a day, in a night, you probably want 4 hours. So and I don't remember us having this discussion, but I can see where if your choices are 7 to 11 or 6 to 10, you might say, gee, 6 to 10 is better. People get there and they get done, and it's not like the latest, because we always go to 10, right? I can see that argument. I don't know, we made that argument, but now you could say, nope, I want a 3-hour meeting. And I'm okay with a 3-hour meeting, and then I got to try to get another quorum for the extra hour, 2 hours that it's going to happen. That to me is less desirable.
So sure, there, as with many things, there are competing concerns.
Yeah.
And this also ties in with the idea of the fall town meeting, which is another thing on my list here that I think you ought to talk about. To me, the major concern is, frankly, the convenience of people to get there. And 6 o'clock, one argument I heard was, well, it's to help parents with young kids. Well, now, wait a second. I mean, you're getting the kids
The other
home from
way.
4 or 5 and you got to feed them and then rush out. 6 o'clock didn't seem to me, when I had kids at home, 6 o'clock would absolutely not have been a better start.
That's the witching
time.
hour, yeah. that's-
Yeah. So, to me, it just eats into the dinner hour and actually makes it more likely for us to get held up by, quorum. And even if we go to a 0 quorum or reduced quorum, you really don't want to have it typically be that you start the meeting with nobody and then people drift in later.
Especially because we do the big money here in the first half hour.
Yeah,
right?
so I don't know why we changed from the traditional time. I'm not aware of any other town that starts at 6. There are
Let's go back
ones
to
that
7.
do morning or afternoon on the weekend, but I would go back to 7 if it's going to stay in the evening.
Well, that's another question, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got sort
I
of
was
hissed
gonna ask
down when
you.
I suggested that we have a weekend meeting, but
Did you notice a difference in the sort of population that came on the weekends as opposed Or was it the same 100 people that
100.
always come, no matter when it is?
So my, obviously I did, it would be interesting, I suppose we could ask the town clerk to look
Ah.
at the. you know,
Yeah,
they
we
have
should.
that would be interesting
think it
to
would
look at
be
the
in-
analysis and
Yeah,
see,
but it's a,
but more or less, I think it was the same people now. But it was also it was pandemic time,
right,
so.
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
It's a
So
flawed
it-
sample set.
It's
Yeah.
also different if you have something more, that you have
Right.
people feel strongly about one way or the other, and they'll decide to come when they might not be one of the regulars.
Right, yeah, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we actually looked at the town meeting attendance over the last 21 years. And it tended to vary between 180, 190 at the low end, typically in the 220 to the 240 range, but could get up, 500 on a,
500?
I think we had one 500 or close to 500, like for
Yeah, I
the,
remember 440.
it was either, the latest school project or the high school, something
Right.
like that.
Right.
Okay.
Which was
So-
cool.
So yeah, it's always a school thing. So I certainly would, there's some towns that regularly do it on Saturdays, and
It's not
it's certainly worth trying it, but there's
I
some,
would say, I mean, if we look at the demographic, it skews older, retired, or kids are out of the house, right? Our goal has been to try to do things for the working parents who want to try to make it. Saturday in the springtime is, I can tell you, is definitely not a good time to do anything that doesn't involve a soccer game or, that.
Yeah.
So I don't think.
yeah,
that-
so there's all,
Sunday.
there's
afternoon.
Sunday and,
Yeah.
so there are trade-offs, whatever choice you make, and I don't know the right answer.
Wayne, what's your
Um,
feeling about the length of time that would be,
Is,
that would be important to plan for? Following up on David's.
well,
comment.
actually, yes, we've had a couple of meetings in, in the 2017, 18. We did have a couple of, go to 2 and 3 night meetings, but actually during my time, most of them, I think about half, 50 to 60% of the meetings we've been able to finish in a night, and they sometimes ran long. But, one of the things that, quite apart from the task force proposal about having fall town meetings, I brought to the select board a couple of times over the last few years that we really ought to be considering having fall town meeting, especially when there are zoning articles and
Right.
planning board, major non-financial ones.
Right.
And certainly if we do that on a regular basis, I think it's pretty predictable that we can do the annual town meeting in one night.
Mhm.
And part of the reasoning behind the task forces, all the reasoning behind the task force's proposal was, yeah, make it pretty assured that we're going to get the business done in one night. And then, people may be more willing to come out and engage, and then, pick their
Yeah.
issues and come in the fall.
So
Right.
what do we need to do to sort of have more informed, informed understanding of whether it should be, it seems clear that if it's on a weeknight, we all, at least those of us here are seem to be in agreement that 7 o'clock is a better start time than 6. But what could we do to be better informed about, should we consider a Sunday afternoon meeting instead of a Monday night? Or if we just are careful about looking at the calendar and scheduling it so that we don't come up back to back with school vacation, we go ahead for another year on a Monday night and see how it goes. But is there, besides looking at attendance and sort of somebody doing the legwork of comparing who's coming at different times?
So, yeah, I've been wondering that question for the last 10 years or so,
Yeah,
of how to actually get valid information from
right.
people. Because in fact, the people you want to hear from are the people you don't normally hear from.
Right.
you know,
Right? It's
people
what's
that
gonna,
haven't come.
so, and voluntary surveys, are of questionable reliability in my mind. If there's something, maybe you like on the annual census or something that
That's
people
what I
have
was
to
just
return.
thinking, right, the
If
annual
there could, if there
census.
could be a really, really short questionnaire, that would
Right.
be
That's a good idea.
incredibly helpful.
And is there any reason that we know of? Like, Steve, I
I'm
would
not
defer to you on
familiar.
this, that we couldn't add a question to our town census about preferences on town meeting time? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you probably do it as a separate piece of
Yeah,
paper.
that's a good idea,
Yeah.
actually.
Okay.
You probably wouldn't want to make a regular habit of it, but it's probably.
No, for a,
No, but that's a good one. I think that's a good
Just
one.
do a
As you say,
quick-
you want to hear from people you don't normally hear
Right.
from. And if you give yourself, so that would be like maybe a 3 o'clock start and then you could go till
which,
7.
yeah, which would you, check off the ones that you
Right.
would
Yeah, right.
be able to attend or would prefer to, I don't know how you word it, but yeah. Have a 3 o'clock Sunday afternoon start or a 7 PM
Right.
Monday night start.
Right.
Yeah.
Would
I
you like
think-
to ask Rebecca if she has comments? Like, she hasn't.
Is that why, well, do you have other things
Well,
you
yeah,
want to
no, I
raise?
had,
Okay.
I had some other things. So that's just pure on the start time.
Yeah.
thing. Let me come back to the fall. There's some separate issues around the fall town meeting. But actually, Barney, you earlier posed the question, or intimated the thing that is most important in my mind, and that is, how do we make sure that people are well informed when they come to the meeting, and that we have solid informed debate when we're at the meeting? And there are a couple of things that troubled me this year, and some of them are trend. I don't know, a couple of different things. First of all, we seem to have fallen in the habit the last year or two. I don't know how or why this happened either. And I shouldn't have, frankly, I shouldn't have allowed it. And that is on the CPA articles. All we put in the warrant this year was, Article 22, whatever, to hear the recommendation, hear and vote on the recommendations from this CP committee.
Mhm.
That is not sufficient notice to the public, flat out.
Yep.
The state statute says no action shall be valid unless the subject matter thereof is contained in the warrant. Okay, that's really broad, but really, what does that mean? And the guideline that I'm supposed to be using, which is the procedural manual called Town Meeting Time, their commentary says the article must include, quote, a sufficient description of the subject matter to provide the voters with substantial and intelligent notice of the nature of the business to be acted upon. Substantial and intelligent notice. We did not provide notice that we were going to vote on a dog park, a dam, bunch of other things. And in years past, we did have all of the committee's recommendations.
Actually, in the
It's
warrant
a
book.
known deadline. The committee, and again, I fault myself for not, raising this earlier. But that I'm just going to state flat out now for the record. If I get another warrant article like that, I will not recognize a detailed motion because I will rule it
So,
out of order.
But
for
it's really,
insufficient
you
notice.
say it's your fault, but it's really select board. Like, why is CSC so late all the
Well,
They
we,
don't have any
time?
meetings.
CPC, whatever it's called. They don't have meetings? I mean, we can
Well,
fix
they
that,
do,
right?
they had
Well,
enough meetings just to
yeah.
do this, but,
Yeah.
and just,
Why not?
they were late. They,
But I mean, we should, I agree with him completely. We
I
should
do
get all
too. I
the substance
completely
in before
agree.
we publish, period.
yeah,
Yeah.
And
and,
if you don't make it, it's a bus stop.
yeah. And
The
if you-
bus goes, okay, catch
Right.
the bus next year,
Right.
right? Goodbye. Honestly, I have no
Right.
sympathy and I totally agree.
yeah, but, well, that's not necessarily fair to the people who
You
applied
know what?
to
You
the
know what?
CPC.
It's the job of that committee to make sure it gets done in time.
Yeah,
And if
Well,
you don't
and I
want to serve
think-
on that committee and you can't meet, then please don't serve on that committee. Let's get somebody else.
Well, the other part of it, I think, David, is that we as the select board need to be on top of the committee. and-
Right, yeah, right.
And enforcing the deadlines.
But there's
that we're
going to be a new
enforcing with
liaison,
everybody
right?
else.
There's going to be a new liaison.
Yep. So, so I think your point is absolutely well
Yeah.
taken, Wayne. I completely agree with you. And we should never have let that go forward. So
Yeah.
we need to correct it.
yeah,
And
Though this would probably be the 150th thing in my life where, yes, I criticize it, and at the same time, over the last 2 years, a lot of things have slipped and not gone exactly the way. So yes, I may criticize them, but I'm not going to beat up on people for.
well, and also, it's been a
We
tough
need-
period
we
of
need to
time
just
for us.
say, let's
Yeah,
fix it
Yeah,
going forward.
Right.
we had
It's been a tough period of time for everybody in
Yes.
town because of COVID and all the
Yeah.
various
Transitions,
restrictions and, yeah, but I think that your point is really well
Yeah.
taken.
Yeah, there was a related phenomenon that, again, this one started during the pandemic, and this is not, it's not your responsibility, but I'm noticing it as part of the Carlisle town meeting culture.
Mhm.
And as Kate knows, as I've discussed many times with her, each town has its own town meeting culture. Concord's is very different from Carlisle's. One of the good things about the Carlisle town meeting culture is that most boards, committees, petitioners, other than the select board, who have articles, go around, traditionally went around and did a dog and pony show to every possible board and committee to ask for their support in the months leading up, and they would, like, you get the agricultural committee, which, didn't meet, but, someone would call them up and say, hey, we've got a warrant article, we need your support. So they'd call a meeting and they'd have it. And then when we get to the floor of town meeting, the ag committee or whichever, it would stand up and voice their support. We had virtually none of that the last couple of years. I suspect because of the pandemic. This year, again, we had none of it. And to me, that is a major problem because it's part of the education of the public. The petitioners, or the advocates for it, they get to come in front of these boards and committees. They face tough questions.
Yep.
And so they get to
Right, it's dry run,
rethink
yeah.
the quality of what they're doing, and they understand what the arguments are. So that by the time they actually come to the floor of town meeting, they've got a more cogent
Okay.
presentation to make. The second thing is that those discussions, again, they get covered in the mosquito, so the public, well, as well as people showing up to meetings, there's more notice. And then finally, if people have missed all that, you come to the floor of town meeting and you hear that, 4 or 5 town boards and committees have looked at it and they think, yes, it's a good idea. That's important information. And we have fallen out of the habit of that. Now, that's not up to you to make.
Well, we
happen.
certainly can give guidance to the
Yeah.
boards who report up to us.
So and one of the things I'm considering and I will likely do is something that typically the way I have worked with proponents is in, the couple of weeks before, asking them to get their presentations into me if they've got slides or whatever. In some other towns, moderators convene a moderators forum like a month out. And you go over a process and make sure everyone understands what is to be done. And I think I need to make a more active, need to let people know, actually, it's more than a month out. This needs to happen
Needs to
starting
be,
2 months
2
out.
months
Yeah.
out.
People really need to be working on this.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I do too. In fact, I'm just thinking in terms of policy, because I know a couple of years ago, I started trying to polish up all of our policies, and this strikes me as something that could be subsumed under a policy.
How would you do
descrip-
that? I don't know.
Well, some sort of a description of some of the expectations that the select board and or moderator have around town meeting.
Is there a
and
policy document that governs
articles.
the town meeting articles?
There isn't, and I'm just thinking, I think there's
So
a
that's
lot of
question. Is there a
policies we should be.
statute? What governs how you write it? Articles?
Oh, well, you've got a statute, and this is one of those statutes that has been on the books in some form or another for a couple hundred years and has not been substantially rewritten. So
Okay,
it
but then
doesn't
there's
go into
guidance.
that
I'm not
deep.
sure it rises to policy, but I certainly think you as town moderator could educate
Yes.
petitioners about the law and about the guidance.
Well,
Yeah.
the advantage of policies is that it's in a book that everybody has access to, and it gives you the steps and the rules and what's expected. So I don't see why,
Okay,
why
I'm
you
not,
would-
I don't care about arguing that point. I think it's more important that he retails the solution than we codify it as a policy, but yeah.
well,
Yeah,
also
yeah, I
as
think.
a reminder to everybody.
Sure, okay.
I mean, I
think
think-
what may be, I have, maybe the easiest thing, because actually I cover this stuff in the various documents that I've published on the moderator's website, but it may be useful for me to just do a one-page, if you think you've got, advice to all, citizen petitioners, boards, committees, et cetera. If you think you're going to be bringing an article to town meeting, here are the things you need to be thinking about and doing, in advance, and here's how far in advance you need to do it.
It's a good checklist for us too, because we go over that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We go over those articles prior to publication, and there's enough time at that point to ask the petitioners if they've gone, like we can probably think of
What
likely
other boards
boards
they
that
should
would be
be-
relevant that they
Yeah.
may not think of and
Yeah.
recommend that they go see them.
yeah. I'm also thinking, in the same way that the FinCom, that the departments
Yeah.
and boards are used to getting the, draft letter from FinCom about, the guidance letter,
Right.
shortly after Thanksgiving, that we could, as a select board, be sending something, kind of
Sure.
about town meeting, right, to do it,
Yeah.
maybe right after the holiday, right, in early January, to just do one of our
Maybe
email
before.
blasts that goes to all the board chairs and department heads,
Yeah,
right,
so
and
when the
just
warrant
kind of walks
closes and
through,
when you need to have your
yes,
attention
yes, and that, about shopping it around to
Well, minutes
relevant
don't help.
committees and also understanding that your motion needs to be, go through a certain process, et cetera, right? But we could help with that and also, get something into the mosquito, right?
Okay.
Then too. So I think that's a good idea.
So
Get
I want to,
that
before
word
we
out
go too
early.
far, because I want to capture, because Steve said they're minutes, but we're going to forget about it. So we're agreeing that
Well,
town
no,
meeting
it-
should be in
okay.
May, right? Well, I wanted like a little bullet list, so I understand.
For yourself. Okay.
For us, not just for me. Town meeting in May, right? Well, Christine knows me. Is that what we're
Early-
saying?
We're saying, well, at least more than a week
Early
after
May,
vacation,
Not after vacation.
right?
And we're saying poll for
Yep, we're good.
7 PM Monday start, not earlier than, right? Or some Sunday afternoon, we'll say, right?
Correct.
Then we said, I missed the middle thing. There was the one before the boards and committees was the, I've already forgotten.
Oh, it's just about the CPA.
Yeah. the
Oh, yeah,
DCPA.
get all detail
All
Right,
details.
every,
before
anything that's
publication,
gonna go in the
before the
warrant book
publication.
has to have
before
the detail.
publication date.
the necessary detail. Yeah.
Okay, and then 4 is It's
Some
gonna be a
guidance about the
guidance. which you're
process.
saying I'm
and
hearing
timing.
both select board letter early January, is that what you said?
I
Arnie?
did
Okay,
suggest
early
that.
January. And/or you're gonna also do something, Wayne, a one pager,
Yes.
PM one pager about
And we
sort of
may decide to put,
do's and don'ts or
Yeah.
helpful hints or whatever.
right, and put something together as a policy. Yeah,
Helpful hints.
So basically what he just wrote.
right, right.
It's just so that we don't have to do this every year. You
Right,
write
right.
it down somewhere and you
Yeah,
have
I
a
get it,
place
I
where you
get it,
can
I get
slide
it.
it,
Okay.
slot it.
All right, I'm good with those. Okay, continue. Now I'm caught up. Please continue.
Well, and the other
So, yeah.
part embedded in that is so people that are bringing a significant article forward are encouraged to go to the relevant boards.
Well, that's part of this, yeah.
I know,
Right,
but
yes,
if you
yeah.
want to spell it out,
Yep, go to.
just so we don't forget that that's a part of it and that
Well,
needs
why
to
are you doing
happen,
this?
right, February,
for
March, yeah.
endorsement. But that would be, and we can guide that, I mean,
Mhm.
because we have knowledge, right? So
That
that- right.
I think CPC though knew what their
I don't know what went on.
And-
there.
and, you know, this is-
This went to think, so there was
Yeah.
something.
This has
again,
been a,
this
yeah, it's been
transition.
a slow slide since I've been on the select board.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it came in earlier and then, you know, just,
Yeah.
so we can get on top of that so that doesn't
Yeah.
happen in the future.
So, so then the last thing on my list is fall town meeting.
Mhm.
So I have a couple of comments on that. So as I mentioned earlier, independently of the task force recommendation, for the last couple of years, I've been encouraging the board to consider that. And I guess, David, I don't recall if you were on the board then, but certainly Kate, you were in, I'd raised this in 2019 and the board then was in conceptual agreement. And in 2020, we were expecting to do it that way.
Yes.
And then the
And-
pandemic happened and
Exactly.
all bets were off. But for precisely the same reason that the task force came to that recommendation, which is to make sure that make it much more likely that we have a one night reasonable length meeting. You know, that it's a better opportunity for people to participate in the democratic process. It's very important. That proposal came to town meeting this year and failed. Now, a couple of things. Now, number one, it didn't actually require a bylaw change for reasons that they chose. The task force thought that would be appropriate. I'm not going to second guess that. Didn't need a bylaw. The select board can always choose to do that. That's number one. Number two, you know, frankly, I assumed there wasn't going to be any opposition or question. No one. And indeed, my understanding was FinCom wasn't going to make a recommendation on that. So I was shocked that there was any opposition. And I was especially shocked that it came from FinCom.
Yeah.
And I was further, I understand that a question was raised by our finance director about the implications for the certification of the budget. Now, yes, that's her job to raise questions and concerns that are relevant to her area of responsibility. I don't question that at all. What I do question is that driving a decision for the entire town with no opportunity, and this gets to the point about why it's so important to have these discussions occur before things go to
Right.
town meeting. There was no opportunity to say, well, now wait a second. What about the hundreds of other towns in the Commonwealth that regularly hold fall town meetings? Are they not able to handle their financial matters? What has happened in the past
I
when
mean,
So all of those questions, now there may be, you know, I don't know what the answers to those
Yeah.
would be. And then even once you get the answers to those, there is an important trade-off to be made that is not the opinion of one employee or even one individual or even one board. But fundamentally, the proposal was based on a set of concerns around citizen participation. And that kind of got blown
Right,
out.
but
of the
the-
water.
Hang
you're
on,
ju-
David,
ju-
let
okay.
Wayne finish.
Yeah,
okay?
so all I'm saying, you know, certainly, had I been aware that those arguments were, I would have recused myself so I could speak from the floor of the town meeting to question all that stuff. So that's where I'm coming from on that.
Yeah, so David, go ahead.
Okay, so I agree with that. However, you jumped over the key point, right? In a way, you sort of, it really, whether, you know, finance directors pointed merit or didn't, or how it progressed is a byproduct of, and Mr. Dar is on, and I'd love for him to chime in. I was also shocked that those issues had not been raised when, it wasn't like, oh, you know, we didn't go to the right board, okay? That, and it wasn't that we didn't have sufficient detail in the warrant book. That article was known for months. And we sat with FinCom on all these articles. And why didn't FinCom, and I don't mean to be overly harsh, Jim, but, and I actually ended up voting against it because I agreed with that point. But I was surprised that that point wasn't raised a month earlier, because personally, I wouldn't have voted at select board to, I mean, that argument had resonance. Was I right or wrong? I don't know. And you're right, I didn't have enough time to process all the details. But the main thing to me is that should have been aired in our normal process that we do. It wasn't a matter of the Ag Commission not meeting. This is FinCom and Select Board that met several times on all these articles. Why didn't we raise that point at that time?
Yeah.
Did you want to comment?
Well, again, I think this is another victim of our transition and leadership. It should never have happened, indeed. And I know after the meeting, I got up and talked to the last two members that were still sitting at the table at the FinCom side and said, tell them how upset I was at hearing this information for the first time on the floor of town meeting. And I also had a very hard decision. I noticed that 3 people on our board voted against the article after having voted
Because we
in
didn't
support
have that
support of it
information.
for that information. And I had then a hard decision to make. How do I vote as a board member or do I vote as a citizen? You know, which again, you know, I would have recused myself and gotten sad in the thing so I could vote my, you know, my conscience, let's say. So the whole process stank. I think the whole, and I know even during the process, week after week after week, we had the warrant articles on there, and I never thought we ever got to them for discussion, and we never really, it got away from us, and it was, I think, partly because we need staff to be counseling on us on some of these things, and they weren't there for us.
Mhm. Yeah,
Really?
we're in transition, right? I mean, but let me, I see Jim is got your video on. Jim, would you like to offer some comment here? Jim
Yes.
Gar,
Yeah.
still the chair of the finance committee until
Yeah,
Monday.
Till Monday. Well, let me say, first of all, my personal opinion is that there was no need for this article because the select board can always call a fall town meeting. But nevertheless, I did not anticipate that the finance committee would take a position on this article. I didn't anticipate it until we were sitting in the cafeteria just before the meeting and talking about, sort of going through the articles. And then Kim raised the question, this point that she, made about the complications that could occur if, you have a town meeting that has a financial article on it. I think even then, when we decided that we would take a position against it, I don't think we expected that position would prevail. I think we were really trying to raise a concern. But it's certainly true. We didn't deliberate any length of time on that issue. My own opinion on that is that it certainly must be workable because, as Wayne said, many towns have fall town meetings and seem to manage to get their budgets ratified by the state. But nevertheless, it was kind of a last minute thing based on Kim's comments. And we really thought we were just expressing an opinion.
Yeah, well, this is a good one, a good learning opportunity, for all of us on something like
You
this.
never realized how
Um,
much power the FinCom had, did you?
That's right. Yeah. Well, I think we were all a little surprised, actually.
Like a Trump endorsement.
Yeah. I see that Rebecca has her hand up too. So Rebecca, I'd like to call on you, please. So Rebecca is the chair of the governance task force. Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I think, the task force had some pretty strong reactions to how that was presented. And so, I think there was a desire to go on the record and have this discussion openly. So I'm glad that we're having that here. And I think that it's valuable to do so. Our feelings, I think that, were expressed kind of by Dave a little bit earlier, is that we've been having some ongoing discussions about our warrant articles and had on at least 2 occasions heard from FinCom that there would not be a position taken on this article, that it was the budget bylaw that was the concern. And so, there have been a lot of conversations and I think a lot of opportunity around that. For if there were any issues to be raised, then they could have been brought to us. I think I would say that the budget bylaw and the bylaw that governs FinCom's voting and recommendations actually suggests that the votes need to occur 7 days prior to the town meeting so that this kind of thing probably doesn't happen. So it's sad and unfortunate that that particular part of the bylaw doesn't appear to have been followed if the vote was in fact taken right before town meeting. So I think, the task force is a group of, residents that have been asked to provide our recommendations. And we are not kind of the long-term appointees or, looking for multiple terms or what have you. We're here to do that. And so it just felt not on the up and up, not very transparent. And I think the other part of our goals and how we work is, very much trying to be transparent, with all of our documents posted publicly and our meetings posted publicly. So I think it was a really hard thing to have happen. And I think that especially in light of the fact that we looked at this as kind of a diversity in voice opportunity to allow additional participants. This came directly, the ideas and concepts came directly from the responses we got in the survey, the resident survey. And again, we had, I think it was something like 430 responses. It wasn't just a small sample, it wasn't an insignificant sampling of residents. So I think that's all I wanted to say. We're disappointed and hope that going forward, there can be a more collaborative and transparent process.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, I think the other piece of this, I'm just thinking about the sort of on the staff side of things. And that maybe is another area where we need to do some more guidance and education around the role of staff around warrant articles so that we don't have a last minute situation where a staff person is raising a concern that hasn't had adequate, review and discussion by the relevant boards. So that's another thing I take from this. Nathan, I see you've joined us. I don't know if you followed where we are on reviewing the town meeting, but before we do have another item coming up. Actually, we're due to start that fairly soon, but did you have any comments you wanted to offer around the town meeting?
No, I don't have anything. I don't have anything in particular to add to what's been said.
Okay. And Wayne, did you have any further comments?
Yeah, just one last thing on this, and then there are two things that are sort of more forward-looking. I do, again, what your last point, Barney, about the importance of having clear expectations so that we can avoid these sort of process missteps. I certainly, I think what Rebecca felt and others have expressed, this was a big surprise, and it is almost inevitable that people take that rather personally, which is tough. At the same time, I can understand how the finance director felt if she had a view that was relevant, that she felt that was important to raise to FinCom. I can understand how FinCom felt like, oh, gee, we've heard a piece of relevant information. It's important for us to convey that to town meeting. And so I'm not going to presume any ill intentions here.
Yeah.
What I am going to say is you're absolutely right. Having clear expectations around process is the way that you avoid these sort of.
It's a timing issue.
Yeah, it's a
Right.
timing issue. Going forward, there are two things. One, Barney, that you raised with me, which is sort of future of the task force and reappointments. And Rebecca is here, I think, and may comment on that as well. And the other thing that I just wanted to say is sort of relevant to what we were talking about earlier about setting expectations for town meeting. I think we have been going under the presumption that there would be a fall town meeting this year, not least to consider other
Right.
other recommendations from the task force, but also potentially to, I don't know whether the planning board has anything on tap for zoning articles and so forth. But certainly I think it would be highly relevant for you to know as soon as possible what other boards and committees have in the way of non-financial articles that they'd like to bring forward, whether FinCom or others have financial things that they will see, probably not right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if later in the summer they see something. But then you need to think about, okay, if there is going to be a fall town meeting, when should it be?
Yeah.
So I think that's real, and setting an expectation for when that will be, even if not a precise date, I think ought to be done this month if possible.
Really?
I mean, I completely agree with you. And I think we committed to the task force that we were going to have a fall meeting. And
Right.
so finding out what else people, want to have on it, I think makes complete sense. Completely
Yeah, I
agree. with you.
agree. I agree. We did I specifically had that conversation with Rebecca about a fall meeting and opportunities to have the task force.
Or
bring some-
that's why we extended their term, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I've written that down on my select board agenda items for the future. So it's so noted. Do you want to talk about the task force going forward? We should try to wrap this up
Yeah, we
fairly
gotta wrap
soon.
it
So quite simply, I'm kind of at the town meeting voted to extend the life of the task force. When I made the appointment letter, since last year's motion hadn't really specified when the task force would end. After consulting with town council, I said, well, let's just say June 30th to make it coincide. So obviously that needs to be extended, and that's why we needed the warrant article. So I can extend it. At least one of the task force members I know is moving out of town. And some others, and I let Rebecca speak to that, have made at least some tentative decisions about whether they are or not willing to go forward. And, to the extent that there are vacancies, then I have the question of how and with whom to fill them in a way that doesn't force the task force to start over. So I don't know the answers to any of those things, but I think it would be important to hear from Rebecca.
Yeah. Rebecca, before I ask for you any comments you may have, this may be something that we want to have further discussion about, right, at a future meeting. But briefly, Rebecca, did you want to just offer some brief thoughts on this comment?
I'm not prepared to take a position on whether or not we should appoint new members or not, but I think we definitely are losing the one who's moving out of town. I think we are losing one other person. I would say I'm relatively certain. I think that has been expressed clearly. And then we have a third who's kind of on the fence. So, and I think the on the fence part is in part about knowing if I think so if there is still a commitment to have the fall town meeting in order to hear the warrant articles, I think that would potentially make a difference in that person, because they were feeling like all is for naught, like everything, like the we've got a moving target and it's just, fall's going to come and that's not going to happen either. So I think if there is the commitment there that there's going to be a fall town meeting, that might be the thing that pushes them over. I can't guarantee that, but that's
Yeah.
what it was. I was going to get some feedback after tonight's meeting was what I was.
Okay.
Yeah, Bernie, I think it'd be great if we just had a joint meeting with them and kind of walk, just kind of, talked about expectations and, town meeting and, just, I think it'd be great if we worked really closely with them between now and a fall town meeting. Just to make sure we don't get there and we have things like what happened last week happen again.
Well, why don't we take this up? We can even, I don't know if we can put it on the May 24th. We could certainly do it early June to both look at, to confirm a fall town meeting and then also to discuss the task force. And Rebecca, why don't you think about whether that proposal of Nathan's is appealing to those of you on the task force that want to continue, or, if you have some other suggestion about moving forward, but let's do that then. Okay.
Yeah,
Everybody
that sounds good. Thank you.
Pardon?
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you, Rebecca, for being here. And thank you, Wayne. Appreciate it. Was a good, difficult discussion, but really important, I think, to have it. And I think we've all got some things on our list to make sure we do better. All righty. So we have next on our agenda is an update from the Public Safety Facilities Task Force. The yeah, which that my one suggestion might be you think about some kind of a nickname, but no, I don't mean to be.
I think this stands for pissed off.
Anyway, I welcome Christine Lear, the chair, and Jerry Lerman, the vice chair, and I really appreciate you being here. So we've got sort of two parts. One is just an update on where things are with the task force, and then the second part really spurred by Jerry's email to the board that I briefly mentioned last time, and it's led to this conversation that'll come after this, which is about the general subject of regionalization of town services. So Jerry, do you and Christine want to just come up and you can each sit at a chair if you rather. Make sure you're, no, Jerry, you come right here. There's a chair right here. And then Christine, just make sure your mic is on, the little green light. No, it's not. It's not. I have a big mouth anyway, Barney. Okay, so welcome.
Thank you. We don't have a formal presentation about where we're at, which is because we didn't have time to prepare something, but we did talk to the task force at our last meeting on Monday, to just sort of agree on what we know at this point. So what we have done so far is we wanted to go back to come forward because Jerry and I sit on municipal facilities, as does Bill Rizzo. So we kind of know the history on the police station, and I know a little bit of the history of the fire station, but we wanted everyone on the task force, as well as the reporting and the mosquito, to say that we've done due diligence and everybody understands and has the opportunity to understand what is the situation with these two facilities right now. So one of the first things we did was we took detailed tours of both of the buildings, and not a surprise, but the police station is just, actually neither one of these facilities is enough for their activities. And it was the Municipal Facilities Committee that we just really felt like you could pour a lot of money into this building and you're never going to get it to be what it needs to be. There's not enough parking. The footprint's not big enough to make the building bigger. And they're not even meeting the code that they're supposed to meet as a police station for the state of Massachusetts. So we took that tour, then we went over to the fire department, and I think that the staff at the fire department has put every inch to work in that building. But they don't have the space to store some other equipment, and they don't have sort of meeting spaces or spaces where firefighters can be between events, or, there's just no real space there. Looking at that building, building was supposed to be built so that it could be possibly
Yeah.
have a second level on it. But we had Stu Roberts come in, who knows both these buildings intimately. He's an architect who does a lot of public buildings. And right now, the thought on that building is that it probably could be built on, but it wouldn't be worthy of an earthquake, which you have to have your emergency buildings worthy of earthquakes because they're the ones that are going to help everybody in an earthquake. So we're still getting some detail on that. I think that we're probably going to have a consultant come in to validate our own opinions because there's a lot of good building people on this task force, but to sort of give us the final words on those items before moving forward. So would you say that's where we're at?
Yeah, I think everybody is convinced that neither of those two buildings satisfies the needs of those departments right now.
Oh, it's on. Yeah.
Neither of those buildings is adequate for the departments as they exist now, and they certainly aren't adequate looking 5 or 10 years into the future. So given the fact that those buildings aren't working right now, then the next step that we're about to tackle is what do we do about it?
And the only other part to that is that you can't really rebuild a fire station on the site of the fire station without building a temporary fire station. So we would, and the police station site is too small. So the question then becomes, if we're moving in this direction, do we build one building or two buildings? And where would you build them? So we've had one meeting about a potential piece of property that may come to the market at some point that would be right. And then there is also across from the state park, there's a facility that's owned by the state that we would like to talk to them about it. We're not going to make any commitments, but we'd like to talk to them about, would this be possible?
Their fire protection.
Well, there's a building kind of back
Yeah.
behind, and then there's a bunch of space
Yeah.
right on the road.
Yeah. So I did engage with Steve about this to say this can take years, but we want to start the conversation because if it takes years, we need the conversation to start sooner. So I think you were recommending a letter from the select board would be the right way to go, Steve, to the
Yeah,
state.
I mean, that's what I would suggest is the select board kind of do the entree into the discussions. And as I told Christine, we went through a similar exercise in Acton with the old Fisheries and Wildlife building. And this now has a fire substation on it, but it took a while and we had to engage in a land swap for more than the land was involved with DCR. So the good news, it didn't really cost any money, but we had to give up some open space to acquire it. But we structured it in a way that the open space we gave up abutted other state land. So, all was all good in the end.
We actually have a lot of that and we can't use it for our fire station. So this might be a really great trade for us.
Well, it also is a possibility if we're going to do a renovation on a site that already exists, then we need a temporary location for police or fire or both. It might be possible to use that land on a short-term basis and not have to take ownership for the state.
Yeah, the biggest problem in dealing with the state is the division, the DCAM, the Division of Capital Asset Management, because they are just slower than snails. I mean, just to lease some property that was state prison land on Route 2 in Acton, which is all soccer fields, took us 5 years to get a lease with them. So it's painful. I've just warned you, it's just really painful. It may end up good in the end, but it's going to take a while.
We just spent an hour talking about process. I'd like to talk about process. To me, figuring out whether there's state land or other land is out of sequence. I like what you said. You've identified a gap. You've done a gap analysis. Now you got to do, what does it cost to fix it versus what does it cost to make new?
I would
Before
agree
before we talk about where we're going to go, I'd really want to see that.
I would agree with you, but I would push back and say if the process
No, if it's a 5-year process and you take 6 months, it's in the noise. Honestly, I really will be against jumping to a conclusion. It always bothers me because we start to
But
put
I'm not-
markers out there.
but we are definitely not jumping to a conclusion, David. What we're trying to do is
People
set
jump
up.
to conclusion.
Well-
I have to forcefully disagree. I'm really going to be against everything that doesn't go stepwise through the make or buy decision. I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to be that thorn in your side for the next year on this.
Well, okay, let's think about though, how we can do this cooperatively rather than laying down a,
Yeah.
you know,
Remember, you're
Yeah.
1 out of 5 votes.
I'm 1
here.
out of 5, but I'm laying my marker down because I do believe,
Okay.
I'm not saying it to be adversarial. I'm saying
No.
it because I truly believe, and you know me, from a process standpoint, I want to go stepwise. And you may not believe that you're putting a marker out there by going to other land, but I believe it will be interpreted that way.
Well, I would say that, yes, it may give the impression that we would be putting a marker out there. However, we cannot control what we're doing in the best interest of the town. And as a taxpayer and as someone who wants these services in play, I want to just get this out there so that we can start that conversation. So when we're ready to have it or not have it, it's ready to go.
Yeah, I would think of it more as exploring possibilities and that our mandate is to explore a wide variety of threads. We're not in the position of picking which one we want to follow, but we'd like to see the whole array of them to know what our choices are.
Fair enough.
yeah. So, anything else on the update or?
Well, we are
Yeah.
going to tour the grounds behind the fire station tomorrow at 2:00 with Sylvia Willard to sort of look at that as a potential expansion point. I don't know what the answer is going to be, but
Mhm.
we're told to wear tick clothing. So,
That's true everywhere in Carlisle.
yeah, I know. That's why I stay in Dayton.
And maybe hip waders.
Yeah.
Uh,
So that's where we're at. And
Okay.
so I think the next steps are going to be to, we've asked Stu Roberts to put together a proposal for him to do some work for us. And then I think we're probably going to engage a consultant to give us the final word on both those buildings.
And do I remember this correctly, that there is money that we allocated at town
Yes.
meeting? Yeah, so not this past,
$15,000.
but the one
Right.
in 2021. Okay, so you have some funds to spend.
Right.
to do these
Okay,
studies.
okay,
That won't
yeah,
slow you up, or trip you up, hopefully.
right,
Yeah,
right,
Good.
okay.
And I think the idea, we don't think of ourselves as an earthquake zone, but we actually are. And so we have to remember
Yeah.
that. Because we're all on granite, and if something happens up in New Hampshire, because it's all granite, it's all tied, those waves go right straight through.
Yeah.
So,
So as an action item, we'll leave it to this group to determine if that letter will be sent for that property.
I
Okay.
would just add that I think one of the things that, we did ask the committee to do was to kind of identify, okay, if it's one building, if it's, or if it's a combined building, to work with fire and police is to like, how much land would be needed to build something if we needed to. And then to identify within a radius of where those two groups would want to be as far as the center of town, what are the pieces of property that might fit for that use? And so I do think that, I think that this is right in line with what we've asked them to do.
Well, the good news there, Nathan, is that both the chiefs have been incredibly helpful. They've come to all of our meetings if they can, which is most of them. And so they're able to really bounce information around with us so that we're not working in the dark. They've been really terrific.
the other thing is though, that we asked you, once you decided that we're not going to reuse those buildings, to look at possible reuses for those, because I personally don't want to see any abandoned buildings in
Oh,
town.
I
Thank you
don't
very
think they'll
much.
be abandoned. We're not even
Well, you know
close
what
to
I mean.
there,
Right,
but I
right. I
think
mean,
that if you look behind me, the board of the COA is right there looking for the fire building.
No, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. Yeah.
So, no,
And
I don't
I
think
would
that'll be
say
hard.
maybe the building department's looking at the police station. So
All right, well, good. Well, thank you.
All right.
And
All right, thank you. That
we
wasn't painful at
appreciate
all.
your work.
All right.
Well, you can stay there if you'd
all
like.
right, well, stay there
Nice
because
comfortable
the
chair.
next thing
Yeah.
actually has some bearing.
Yes,
This one
definitely.
Has some bearing on this.
So if you recall, we 2 weeks ago, or whenever, however many weeks it was, we agreed that we wanted to have just a very broad first conversation about regionalization of town services in Carlisle. So we're sort of at a point where we're looking at a number of issues that are fairly substantial in terms of the financial implications. So we've set aside a good chunk of time in our packets. Steve had included what I thought was quite a helpful document. It's from a little while ago. I think it's 2013, but I think it still was very helpful. This is from MARPA, which stands for Metropolitan Area Regional Planning Association or
Commission.
Commission.
You said we had a bad.
Oh,
Pardon?
Oh.
Massachusetts Association of
I-
Regional Planning Agencies.
Yeah, so if if those of us that got the packets and I sent them on to Kara, I think it sent it to you as well as for the Christine and Jerry. So not that we have to necessarily start with that, but I found it helpful. I do want to also just mention that Carrie Kissinger, who's looked into this question we did a little bit of research into this around the master plan work. And so I invited Carrie to join us tonight as well. So maybe just opening thoughts about this. I'll tell you, when I read through the document in our packet, it was helpful to sort of pull back and use a broader lens to look at the question of town services, because there were just all kinds of things that were pointed out there. And so it's not just police and fire, but you think about the schools, the public health department, you think about our maintenance, our street sweeping, inspectional services, energy, planning services, the contracts, office supplies, a lot of areas that when you read through that document, different towns have approached trying to work together to realize some efficiencies, or at least, and in some cases, realize some savings. And that I think this is an opportune time for us to grapple with that as a town, to start, give it some serious thought.
I just want to add one
Yeah.
thing, and it's town to town, but the other thing, and we've just kind of, stuck our toe in the water around this too, but the other resource sharing is between school and town. And this is where we've started,
Yeah.
maybe we haven't talked about IT in depth yet, but we certainly have talked about the maintenance of municipal facilities. So that's another, there's a lot of places where. we
That's
could
what I was
be-
thinking, Kate. It's sort of like the same idea on a different scale.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, but they actually discussed that
Yeah,
right
yeah.
in this report.
right.
So, that's what,
It's also HR because like in Westford, we joint with the superintendent and I hired an HR director to serve town and school.
right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And right now they don't have a business manager at the schools, and they've been using a lot of our services. So we could be,
Yeah.
trading a lot of this stuff.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and the other thing that, I thought was worthwhile thinking about too is thinking about if we know that there are retirements coming up, which, we can certainly identify one or two that we at some point are going to happen, in the,
Well,
in
of
the-
course, and then there's some that have already happened.
yep, that's right. But so planning now
Yeah,
so that when that happens, so it's not that you're, eliminating someone's job, but that they are retiring and you're ready, if
It's
it
an
makes sense,
opportunity.
right?
Yeah.
To
right.
be sharing resources with another town, or in this case, with the school. Yeah, I thought it's a good thing to be thinking about as well.
So right now, the regional, so I think that between the school and the town, that just makes all the sense in the world, right? I mean, because that's just a direct savings to us, right? To the town and to the school. I mean, that just makes so much sense for us to do that. With other towns, I just want to make sure that I'm remembering correctly. Right now, we're regionalized with the high school, and we're regionalized with veterans benefits, right? The veteran affairs person with Bedford. Are there any others? We used to be regionalized part-time with the building inspector with Concord.
Yeah, we're
Um,
not anymore on that.
That's what I said. That's what I said. We used to be. And were there other things that Board of Health, I think, oh no, yeah, the Board of Health, I think that we leveraged Concord to be able to expand hours
Social-
for
It was scared of-
inspections.
Right. We had that grant, didn't we, that where we had the
We had a social worker. I think.
social worker that we were sharing with.
Right, and we also had the energy person.
Yep.
We tried
now-
to regionalize animal control officer with Acton or Westford, and that went over very poorly.
Did we actually, because I'm not aware of that one, Nathan, did we actually try doing that or?
So
or
we entered discussions and the room filled.
Ah, okay.
I would say, I would just say, just from my experience in talking about regionalization, I think we want to be very careful about what we pick, because my sense, just from having seen things over the last 7 years, is that people really like having things in Carlisle and having that connection and those people to go and talk to. So I think we just want to be, I never would have, I never would have expected the animal control to be an issue. But it really was. We talked about dispatch and the room filled. And so I think we just want to be careful about that. We're not, it's almost like I wish we could go back in time and ask town meeting last week, for a litmus test about, should we be looking into regionalization, right? Just so that, it would just kind of stink to, spend a lot of time on some of these and then just find that there's just no support for it at all. So I just think we just want to be really careful and maybe dip our toe in like we already have in some areas. But right now, I think it's only the veterans and the school.
Well, we now have this new sustainability director that we're going to share with Westford.
For a year.
Okay, that's another grant one, kind of like the energy person was with Concord.
Right.
Yeah, it's a grant, but it's a that becomes
Yeah.
a pilot,
Yeah.
basically, right? And you see if
And-
it works or not.
Yeah, and I think one of the things about the way we frame this, because I really do believe this, I'm not just saying this like for marketing purposes or something, is that to think about what are some things that it would allow us to do? What are some benefits to the town, or to have something either that we're just sharing with another town or something that's even sort of more on a regional level. I'm thinking of housing in particular, and so I do think that is an important, just mindset in addition to thinking about, cost.
Well, I
Yeah, go ahead.
highlighted something in the report.
Yeah.
It says regionalization efforts nearly always improve quality, consistency, and professionalism of service, but they may not always reduce the cost.
Yeah. Yep.
But, you're still getting something.
Yes.
You may,
Yes.
you may not be seeing a savings, but you might be getting some better services than we
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
And so we just need to be really clear about that, because I think
Right.
when I've spoken to people about this, I think there's a doubt that it will actually save enough money to move the needle. And so I think that, if we go about this saying we're doing this to save money, I don't think we're going to get very far.
Yeah.
So I think we do need to talk about, the other things. whatever they are. And I think it depends upon what it is as to what those other things are. But again, I think between the town and the school, I think that we should just be all over that.
I'd have your support
Jerry
on
had
that.
a comment, and then Carrie, if you want to pull up a chair, you could use this mic too. Yeah.
So I kind of brought this up in the context of the police station and the police department and the fire department. And in terms of our task force, part of our due diligence is looking at what's possible. And if we decide the existing buildings aren't suitable, we need new buildings, what will those buildings serve? And in order to defend those choices in front of town meeting, we have to be able to say, well, we looked at regionalizing the fire department, and there are a couple of questions. One is, can we do it? Is it feasible? And the answer is maybe yes, maybe no. And the other is, how do we do it? And in terms of the buildings, what does that mean in terms of the building that we need to serve a fire department that's part of a region, or a police station that's part of a region?
Mhm.
And the costs involved there, they may not involve operational costs in terms of running a police department or a fire department, but they certainly have implications on the cost of the building.
Mhm.
This is the right time to ask these questions, because we won't get to ask this question for the lifetime of these buildings.
Again, yeah.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah,
Right.
totally agree.
Carrie?
Well, thank you, Barney, for inviting me, and Christine, thank you for inviting me to the task force meetings as well. I've been involved with the master planning committee, primarily focused on fiscal sustainability kinds of things. And I collected a lot of data in order to look at it from that standpoint. And we compared ourselves to 7 other towns that are wealthy towns like ours, inside of 495, less than 20,000 population, 95% of their taxes coming from residential tax base, all of those similarities. And one thing that sort of after a while began to jump out was size matters.
Mhm.
And with Sudbury being the largest of these at just under 20,000, Sherburne being the smallest at just below us at 5,300, when looking at what we spend per capita for the services that we provide, Carlisle is at least 10% above the average of these other towns
Mm.
in per capita costs for providing things like the Council on Aging, virtually everything. And when it gets to 24/7 types of services,
Mhm.
then that number becomes even bigger,
Really?
except for fire. I mean, we plus Sherburne and Dover all have on-call fire. And I mean, in terms of best practices and in terms of costs, you can't get much better than that. There's just no question. We are so far below the average spending of these other 7 towns in that regard. I mean, it's stunning.
Yeah.
But the other kinds of services, like public safety, like police, 24/7 services, we're significantly, in case of public safety, I think we're almost twice the average
Wow.
cost per capita to provide public service, also known as dispatch, which we've been talking about. So it's interesting that when you're small and you don't have economies of scale, and you don't have a large staff for the police force or for the dispatch, staffing on weekends and holidays and sick leaves and those sorts of things. I mean, Chief Fisher has consistently said how difficult it is for him to staff appropriately with a small group of folks. So it is all about best practices. It's somewhat about costs. But in looking, when I heard it last August, for example, that Acton and Concord had combined their dispatch, I thought, gee, that's really interesting. I read all I could read about it. And yes, there were some savings, but the overwhelming rationale was staffing flexibility.
we have critical mass by combining these two, staffing flexibility. We're no longer haunted by the inability to staff when we need it. And when they announced that, they said, you know, the state would have been delighted. They're delighted we're a 2-town solution, would have been really delighted if we had been a 3-town solution. And I thought immediately, Carlisle could be that 3rd town without knowing anything about any of it.
Yeah.
But as the more I've attended your meetings, Christine, one of the things that jumped out was Chief Fisher's still ringing in my ears. You know, we don't have, even though the new police station would be the same size, we don't need a bigger police station, even though. But right now we have parking issues. We have too many bodies in the building. We have a dispatch group that doesn't have access to the restrooms. Because we are a dual function building, we're a dispatch and a police building. So and I know the acting town administrator for Concord has contacted Tim Goddard, and I don't know, I think Steve, was in late February that she contacted him to talk about. Yes, did I say what Concord? Yeah. To talk about, could there be a 3-town solution to dispatch? I don't know if that went anywhere.
I don't
and
know either.
Tim's gone, so.
I mean, you know, just by way of history, and I may have told you this, Carrie, that I want to say 12 years ago, Acton got a grant to study regional dispatch, and it was wide. I mean, it was, Sudbury was in it, Maynard, Concord, Littleton, Boxborough, and I just can't remember if Carlisle was part of it. So that was 12 years ago, and it finally, after all those years, morphed into 2 towns
and
finally
Concord.
doing it. Right, exactly.
But I think to Jerry's point about we need to know what these buildings are going to be used for. And if it's a single-use building that we're going to go, we will be asked to join the Acton Concord dispatch. That's going to be a question that we will have to answer, whether or not we want to even think about it.
They dispatch jointly, but they have 2 different police.
Well, they're physically, they haven't started yet. They're still working it out.
Right.
Yeah.
So
The
anyway,
first issue was unions in both towns and negotiating with the dispatch unions and that kind of stuff. So that took a while.
but I guess that's my only sense of providing some context
Yeah.
is that economies of scale are not to be had here. Size does matter. Cost per, one of the recommendations for fiscal sustainability from the master planning activity and the master plan is that when we measure the effectiveness of things in town, we measure them on a per capita cost standpoint. And so that's one of the benchmarks I think that we're going to be hopefully that the implementation of the master plan will afford us to be able to do and look at that stuff more quickly, closely. So I just thank you for letting me be here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate
And,
the,
I just wanted to provide that context, and I hope it's helpful.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think one of the ironies of Massachusetts, and you know, I've worked in other states, right? And my first job out of grad school, I worked for a county in New York State, and you know, Massachusetts basically outlawed counties, whereas every other place in the United States, counties do a lot of what we're talking about. When I worked for this county in upstate New York, I mean, they did the county sheriff would have covered a town like Carlisle for police and for dispatch. We had a property like assessors that assessed the value for all the towns. I mean, just you know, counties do a lot, and you know, here in Massachusetts, we basically have outlawed them all.
Yeah.
So it's kind of ironic.
yes, now we're trying to slowly try to move in the other
I've
direction
thought
again,
about,
right?
that's interesting because it seems to me, and I grew up in New York, all you end up with is a 3-layer. You got the state, the county, and the towns. You got an extra layer of administration. I actually kind of like the direct state to the town model myself because
Right, but the county did a lot of stuff that the state does here. So, so it was a little more like running probation department and the courts and even RMV.
Oh, I see. Is that more efficient though?
I was like 40 years ago when I was doing that. can't
I don't
say
think of
what-
New York State as being paradigm of efficiency, but anyway.
I mean, I
Okay,
think counties are big, in many places and, throughout the country. And I think it does provide an economies of scale and it makes it a little bit less of this town has so much more than this town over here has because it's more spread out at the county level. I do want to bring up, it was very early in my being on the board, and I don't mean to just keep bringing up history, but maybe we could dig it up, or maybe, somebody could ask Tim. We were talking about maybe 5 years ago, we were talking about regionalization of dispatch, and it was a group of towns north. And we got pretty deep into it. Maybe we could find out like when that happened and dig up the minutes and just try to figure out like what those discussions were and why we ended up at a
You talking
no,
about
just so we
Chelmsford,
don't.
Billerica, those towns.
When you say,
Chelmsford,
yeah,
Billerica?
is that what you're thinking? Maybe Nathan?
It's in the book here. Amesbury,
Chelmsford,
Beverly,
Remember
Billerica,
it?
north of
Gary?
us.
Because-
Yeah, it was, honestly, I don't remember the towns.
Yeah.
But it was a, if I'm remembering correctly, it was a significant number. They would have just done all of our dispatch, and we had Chief Fisher in, we had at the time Chief Flannery in, and to talk through it. Maybe Tim remembers like about when it was, so that in finding minutes, I think it'd just be good to kind of recall the history and not relearn things if we don't have to.
It was
Yeah.
longer ago than 5 years ago, though, because I don't remember this. And do you remember it, Carrie? Because you were on longer than I.
did speak with both with Acton and Concord more recently.
Gary,
about
just
what-
so people can hear, just come on
I
up.
did
Yeah.
speak with Acton and Concord more recently about what it took to get them together. And they both said, we are at each other's throats as towns over things like water rights.
Oh, yeah, the
other
Magog
stuff.
Pond has been going
And
on
this was
forever.
so compelling that to do this, it just made so much sense for staff, from a staffing flexibility standpoint, because the dollars were north of a wash. There were some savings, but they weren't anything to write home about. So it was this, and we're going to be asked to join them. I think that's the only point I'd like to make is it's almost a certainty that we will be asked to be a 3-town, center.
Okay.
And if we say, well, we haven't, we've just dismissed that out of hand for whatever reason, that's not gonna play in a town like this where things happen when they make sense. So anyway, that's,
Carrie, can I ask you a question?
yes, sir.
So, and I am a proponent of regionalization, but if you did the per capita thing, so if the tax on a resident is $1, I don't know, like how many pennies is the police? I mean, I guess I know that if I look at the budget, but the police is like 6 cents or something, right?
Oh,
Out
I
of the
don't-
budget. I mean, it's,
I don't have that
okay,
information.
maybe it's 10
in
cents.
front of me, but it's.
I mean, the schools is 65
schools-
cents, right?
well,
So,
Yeah.
I'm just
schools
saying-
is, right, sure.
I mean, it's you, so again, I am a proponent, but to be, factually honest, you could say our per capita cost for police is, and by the way, for me, public safety is fire, police and dispatch,
Right.
but for police, let's say, is 2x. But if it's 2x of a dime versus 2x, like, I mean, the net savings
yeah.
in the big pie is not as big as
Yeah.
that would lead us to
I
believe.
think in
just-
this case, it's not so much the operational cost. And I think, as I said, reading this
Yeah,
report,
right.
sometimes it's you don't save that much money. But if we're designing a building and
Oh,
we
yeah,
don't
no,
have
no,
to design a
listen,
dispatch
I
center, that
completely.
is where we're going to save
Well,
our
I
money.
completely agree. And by the way, if you don't, I mean, let's talk about regionalizing police. As you absolutely point out, the staffing flexibility is probably the biggest thing,
Mhm.
but you don't need your own jail. I mean,
Right.
certain things like
Right.
you don't need those things, that brick and mortar things, right? In the regionalized approach. So,
Well, and overall, 80% of our budget is salaries and benefits.
Yeah, yes.
And we're
Yes.
still growing at a glacial speed of 100 new houses every 10 years. And so, I mean, I was frankly, it got my attention when at town meeting, they said, you know, our school increases this year for salaries and benefits are going to be 6 to 7%. I'm thinking COLAs are 2%. Well, 6 to 7%. And we're going to have a different mix of high school students that could add another grand, $1 million rather, to our
add a grand.
budget.
In the
I mean,
future.
I'm so too much. Well, so I'm thinking, you know, if we're not growing any faster,
Yeah, right. How are we
And-
gonna, right, how are we gonna pay for this?
so
Right.
it's, we need to be very careful. Jim Dar, I know, agrees with that. He's pointed all that out to me. So that's just the context is it's
Right.
tight. It's tight.
Right. And so we need to be very intentional, right, about
Yeah, thank you.
going forward.
Right, and
Yeah.
I think, we were talking about dispatch, right? So that doesn't replace jails and things like that, but I do think that if we're looking into this, and we're thinking about structuring deals, we're so small, right? That it makes it very hard for us to have a voice. And so somehow, particularly if there are groups that want us to join, it might give us the leverage to try to get a bigger voting thing. Because we're just, I mean, that's why we got out of the Minuteman tech, right? We had just no say, but we were going to get this massive charge that we were going to have to pay. And we're kind of along for the ride with the high school. It's hard being so small, whereas, particularly, and I'm not against looking into regionalization at all. I think we do need to, find some places to save money, in particular between the school and the town. But partnering with towns like Acton and Concord puts us in a very weak negotiating perspective, ongoing, right? We're just so much smaller. And so how it's structured really matters. With the school, it's based upon the number of students. So we're always going to have a small vote. It would just be nice if we had a little bit more of a stronger vote in how things are done.
Yeah.
I'd like, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, again, when you read this report, it's not all the things are like the schools. Sometimes you can they charge you, the other town just charges you an hourly rate for a certain service that you can't afford to put a person full-time on staff, but you can hire them for some stuff. So there's all kinds of regionalization,
Ways to go about
schemas
it,
that
yeah.
we,
Well, that's what we do with Minuteman. We went from, instead of having part of the budget, we pay them by the hour for the services that we use.
Yeah.
But I was also going to say in response to Nathan is that part of this question, asking this question now, is so that the question is ours to ask and ours to answer, as opposed to the time when we don't really have a choice and we're beggars at the door.
Yeah.
So I that's why I think that this is really the right time to do this.
I'd like to make a comment.
David, yeah.
So on your comment, totally agree. I mean, this is great to have this discussion. I think we should figure out the way to do it,
happens
right?
next,
It
yeah.
shouldn't be all on like the public safety committee to do all this heavy lifting. I want to go back to the very valid comments that Nathan made, just to reflect from my tenure. First of all, at FinCom, when I think it was in FinCom, I think I was in FinCom when we fired, basically, we opted out of Minuteman. And then, having had experience with the region. So it's never easy to be the minority partner. It's not easy in the business world. It's not easy because you don't have leverage. But I think, so first of all, just on the Minuteman piece, and it relates exactly what you said, Christine, we were going to be stuck with a proportionally much bigger financial obligation than our footprint there would agree. And even though now, like, the per pupil cost is like 30,000 or something, it's a lot, but it's way cheaper in the big picture because we don't use that much of the service. And I would say that model, I would turn over to town hall. It's not exactly regionalization. It's just buying services it's a make buy decision.
Yeah.
And I think we can do that, just like Nathan's saying, that's something we can do without an IMA and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
We should just look at a hard look at things that are non-core that we could vend out, even if we pay a little more, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But on to the one really true regional
arrangement we do have, which is the school. We are the minority partner, and every once in a while they stuff it to us, and we don't have that much leverage, we have some veto. Capital, we have veto. We don't have a lot of veto, but, and I think this is really important, running a high school is incredibly expensive. And whether we're 20%, 25%, whether once in a while we got to pave a road that maybe we wouldn't if it was ours, I have to say publicly, we get a great deal.
Yep.
If we had to run our own high school, A, it would be hugely expensive for our population, and B, we could nowhere near offer the breadth of opportunities that those kids have because we have the leverage. So we have to make a trade. There's no easy way to say, I'm a minority partner, but by the way, I want a blocking right. I mean, they're not going to be interested in that. So we have to be accepting of those services where because of scale, we could no way offer
do that
our
ourselves.
citizens, students, whatever,
Right.
the opportunity. And so I think that's one where that's been a win for this town and for Concord, but it's certainly been a win for this town.
And I think
over
it's
the
good to
past 30
say
years.
that, David, because I think that the schools are always this big, like, oh, the school gets all the money. But I think
No,
it's
I-
important to
right.
see that it's still a
This is
remarkable school.
clearly one of those cases where we improve the quality and as you said, the breadth. I mean,
Yeah.
number of languages, various kinds of things. When you have a small population of kids, you cannot offer those kinds of.
Well, yeah,
services.
I think that really, I mean, I think it's amazing that we're regionalized with Concord. I think, I believe that, not only is it saving money, but in a town the size of Carlisle, it is good for our students, for our children to be going to a larger school and interacting with an even, with a larger group of people. I think that just prepares them for those that go on to college, for all of a sudden there's even more people there. I think there's so many reasons why regionalizing, having our high school regionalized with Concord is a good idea. I think what brought this up was, the public safety, right? And I just want to ask, just a question. So because, we've regionalized and unregionalized various things, right? And so I think that, I think the public safety group is looking for, just some direction is, are we going to be regionalizing? Are we not going to be regionalizing? And it's about the building, right? And so I just want to throw this out there. Let's assume that we're going to build a new building, right? And let's assume that we're thinking, okay, we want to, regionalize dispatch. I guess I always look for the what ifs. Would we not build the building with the capability of having a dispatch in it in case the town grew to the point where they wanted to pull in dispatch? Even if, it could be used as a conference room or something, right? Or, like, would we want to build the building with that as an option, in the future? And therefore, would that mean that in looking for space and looking for, and in designing a building, we would want to go ahead and build that in, even if that space was used for a different purpose and it was just there in case? Because it would really stink to build a brand new building and then we regionalize and we find that it's really not working for us. And in 5 years, we say we need to, we need to do our own dispatch and we have no place to put them. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, again, from a context standpoint, dispatch is 100 square feet.
Right. That's why I'm asking, it's because there's the physical space for it. And, really, does that add so much if we could use it for something else? And then, we can move forward with the public safety analysis and simultaneously move forward with potentially regionalizing dispatch. And one doesn't impact the other.
Jerry?
Well, I mean, part of our mandate is looking at facilities that would serve the town at some point in the future, 10, 15, 20 years. That's incredibly hard to do without throwing in those sort of what ifs, which I think are really small compared to the very large what if of, are we still going to be an on-call fire department in 10 years? And those are really large issues that we need to grapple with.
Mhm.
On that note, how much, and Carrie, did you look at, like, how much is having your own dispatch twinned with the on-call nature of your fire department compared with having a third-party dispatch? Did you guys look at that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Dan.
Okay. Dispatch for police being not co-located with police, I understand that. I don't know, because I'm not a on-call firefighter. I don't understand how intimate dispatch in a town here where we have on-call people and the knowledge, the local knowledge of that and how that works. Is that not an issue? I mean, in regionalizing the dispatch?
Intuitively, it's absolutely an issue. And for example, the Council on Aging wanted to have someone else share transportation dispatch.
Yeah.
Well, nobody knows our Carlilians like we know our Carlilians. It's always going to be an issue.
I
Always
don't
going
mean
to be
an issue like to not do it. I mean, is it a real functional issue?
That I cannot answer.
Yeah,
I know,
we'd
I
have
know.
to-
that-
Well,
I
it
don't-
it is a functional issue because the Carlisle Fire Department is unusual since we don't have fire hydrants. The kind of equipment they bring depends critically on where the emergency is. How far is it from a water source? And that's the kind of thing that dispatchers would need to know. And is it something they could learn? Yeah, I think they probably could, but that's part of the issue that has to be looked at.
Mhm.
I'm also going to completely retract we looked into dispatch before because what Carrie said, that's the one I was thinking about, was the Council on Aging.
Oh, the Council on
COA.
Aging.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
But we did in my time as in FinCom, we did look at regionalization of police. And we had some fairly substantive discussions with the Concord Police Department. And it was very much what you said, a much more flexible staffing model. And the common complaint, if you will, the NIMBY complaint, let's say, or the opposite of NIMBY, I guess, IMBY complaint, like in my backyard of, how long will it take for somebody to get there? No, they would operate the police station as a precinct. They would
yes.
staff it as a precinct. They would
Yeah.
have squad cars, maybe not all the carcasses in the backyard, but it would have the cars it needs and the people it needs, and they would be right there. It's just that John is sick. I pick Joe from the pool and he comes up, right? And so I think, I guess, eventually, and it's not tonight, but we're going to start to figure out how to tackle this. But I want to reflect back on something Nathan said, which I interpret to say, let's start slowly. But I don't know about starting slowly. I really think because of the convergence of these issues, we probably need to start with some of these big ones. In my opinion, just my opinion.
I think you're right on that one because of what the immediate task that you all are tackling. Yeah. So, well, I was going to ask just again, while we're sort of brainstorming about this, how we would go about looking at some of the other questions about regionalization or the other services that we might want to consider. If you look through that document, they talk about their approach seems to be you identify a service that you think it might make sense to regionalize, and then you put together a committee to work on figuring out what's possible.
Yeah, so start with low-risk relationship building ventures.
Yeah. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to jump right into the biggest and toughest ones. No, but
What low risk things do we have?
yeah.
Well, it says good first ventures include joint procurement.
We already kind of do that. We're part of a consortium. Purchasing consortium.
The state does a lot of the purchasing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well, then it says, take advantage of staff attrition and retirement.
Right.
We talked about that.
Yeah.
Look for natural partnerships.
Yep, yeah, yeah.
Members of the same regional planning agency, geographic closeness,
Yeah, yeah, all this stuff.
you know.
Cool.
There's a lot of things through MAGIC, MAPC. I was just at
Right.
a MAGIC meeting.
Would it make sense, though, to put together like a, I don't know, a task force or a subcommittee to just look at regionalization, just touch on every area, read that report, touch on every area and say, okay, so this is one we should explore. Just so that somebody's familiar with the language, I'm hoping you'll be in there.
Right. And what
Yeah.
other towns
Yeah.
have done
I
and
think Kerry would be key on
Yeah.
this. I mean, he's done a
Yeah.
lot of
Right.
research. He's a good advocate for it. And, well, then they talk about using the regional planning agency. So
Right.
they're already here. I mean, let's
Right.
not reinvent the wheel,
Right. Just
and
like-
we're
Yeah.
already, as I said, we're already part of MAGIC, which does a lot of this kind of stuff already. And,
So I would evaluate things in terms, first of all, can we do it? Is it possible to regionalize? And then the next question is, if it's possible, should we do it? Is it
Yeah.
worthwhile for
Right.
the town in terms of flexibility, savings, operational?
what are the benefits that would make it worth
explore potential
pursuing?
services to
Yeah.
share.
Yeah.
I think it also, just getting, I hate to keep harping on it, but the school town thing. I think we need to tackle that too, because, if the example is something like procurement, right? And, or, if the example is something like HR or something like that, where we're sharing it, we kind of have to do it as a complete town, or we're not really getting the benefit from it.
Mhm.
And so I think sharing with the high school, I mean, the Carlisle Public Schools, I think, that's really super important for us to really be able to leverage what we'd be trying to do here.
Yeah. And we have an opportunity, in a couple areas. One is, currently the school is using a consultant to do, instead of hiring a business manager. And the other is, we've just approved a budget that for the town to hire an assistant town administrator once we have a permanent town administrator on board, with the notion that that was going to be somebody who did a lot around human resources. Right. So we should be
Yes.
looking at those things vis-a-vis the school.
Well, when we're hiring, we're going to be looking for a leader to spearhead a lot of this stuff too, because the first paragraph in this whole report says a lot of this stuff, it's just your town administrator making deals on the side with the guy next door.
Right.
Yes.
And you don't even have to know about it
Yeah.
necessarily. But then
Right.
they also talk about, let's not forget places like the Collins Center, which already did a report for us at one
Right.
point that we
Shall-
let's not, there's all kinds of technical support out there.
Yes.
And a lot of it is not that expensive, and it would be really helpful, I think, for this sort of thing, to have somebody who knows what they're talking about
Mhm.
to come and help us. I
Mhm.
mean, because, Harry has done a lot of the work and the groundwork, but
Yeah, there are people out there
There's
that,
Well,
people
there's a
that-
whole list of towns that have done it.
right.
and there's
Right.
a list of towns that have done it, and then there's a list of towns that who have used, has gotten help, and the
Right.
helpers got
Right.
them there.
Right.
So.
So
let's not
us
knock-
going forward,
Yes,
the
yes.
task force.
the pissed off one, yes.
So tell us where this fits in our next steps, because
Yeah.
we're meeting Monday.
Well, it seems to me we've concluded that definitely there should be exploration around dispatch. Right. And I don't know whether you think as a task force, you are up for taking on looking at what's happening between Acton and Concord and figuring out whether that's something, and not that necessarily you would pursue an agreement, but do some of the legwork to figure out where,
In terms of our mandate, that really is small potatoes, because
yeah,
in terms of the footprint
yeah.
of delivering that service, it doesn't really
Yeah.
count for much.
Can-
Looking at the concept of regionalizing fire coverage and police coverage has a
That's a
much
whole
more
bigger-
significant.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
can I venture an opinion? I think going back to, and I'll withdraw my comment earlier, so please go look at town land anywhere you can find it. But analysis of alternatives is your mission, right?
Right.
So I get it. So I personally would not advocate tethering them with this big thing. I think we've got to
Agreed.
figure out a committee. What will help, this is going to be like a long process, right? So what would help our collective decision-making about the alternatives that these guys come up with would be have parallel what-if scenarios on. So if they come, let's just say that they conclude, as they are kind of intimating, that, it's really cost ineffective to Band-Aid these two buildings. So either we temporarily and we rebuild them, or however the method,
Yeah.
but here are the 3-4 options: joint building somewhere, temporary and build new ones here, blah, 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 blah. And the fix-it options and all that. And we look at that menu, and at the same time now we're beginning to bring in, now we understand what the cost is for us. If the conclusion is, if you still
Right.
have your own
Right,
police, you're
full
gonna have to spend 10
services.
million,
Yeah.
$20 million, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we know that, and that may help us in our decision if we have the other data of how it
Right.
might work. So I think I would advocate running a
Parallel
parallel
tracks.
process and
I
just kind of
agree.
let's get on that.
And I
Yeah.
think we need to spearhead the others.
Yes. And I
Yeah,
want to
we
just make
appreciate
one more
that.
thing before I forget the point, which is a little different, which is, yes, we should definitely look at, what's been done before and da, da, da. But also we touch physically on 5 well-run towns. They're all well-run, and they're all significantly larger than we are. And I would have conversations with those town managers. Just what could you offer us? Like, where do you have slack capacity where you could actually add, again, like using the police example from before, it's 20%. It's like, can you grow 20% without a whole lot of stretch? And they might say, yeah, we got, all this stuff that we may not have even thought of if we're looking at it from the push side,
Mhm.
let them tell us what they would, I think that would be a useful exercise in this process.
David, I love what you said about not necessarily regionalization. Sometimes it's contract.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
it's
that's one of the
contract.
things.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an IMA,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know what an IMA is, so.
intermunicipal
agreement.
agreement.
IMA, another fun
Yeah, there's
acronym.
MOUs,
International
IMAs,
martial
Well, I like how
International
Steve
martial
rattles up
arts.
his Department of Property Management.
Yeah.
DCAM, yeah.
Yeah, Steve, as a town administrator in a number of places, what do you think about that approach as one of the pieces of what a parallel group would?
I mean, I think it would work. I think, probably the manager would need some forewarning before approaching, probably from my office or whoever's office. it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
we weren't
You
thinking.
wouldn't go
Right.
willy-nilly.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. I mean,
You're making the first call, Steve. You can.
I'm not calling my old town. I'm not gonna do that. But, sometimes, I mean, just, I know that, when I was in Acton, we often talked about doing this very thing for Boxborough, doing police and fire for Boxborough, and
Yeah.
just, there was not interest. So, the main thing is
interest
you got to find the will on both ends
Right.
to do it. And the Acton Police Department, the public safety building is set up for, probably, I think, 60 officers long term, so, they probably ultimately would be interested in that discussion. But then you also have to think about that, all these departments belong to like regional entities, and the towns don't always, like the fire regions and the police regions don't necessarily are the same towns.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you'd have to figure out like, I know the police department here is associated with Nemlik, sorry
Yes.
about that. But, but they provide a lot of, a lot of regional support, SWAT and all that.
Yes.
So if you went with Acton, who's not in Nemlik, you know, that could be.
Oh,
an
I
issue,
see,
you know,
yeah.
So you have to, it's a lot of
That's
things to
part
think
of
about.
the- That's
Yeah.
part of the consideration.
Right.
Yeah, our chief
exactly.
is big in them, like, so we
Yeah,
got
right.
a good relationship with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I think so your charge is as it's
Yeah, I like that.
written. Is that?
So we'll keep on keeping on.
keep on
Can
keeping
you give
on?
us, you have
Exactly.
any like estimate of the next check-in point, like when you have a?
Yeah, a couple months. I think we just need to, we're figuring this out as we go. So until there's something to really tell you.
Oh, I know, I don't want to have a meeting just to have a meeting, but I
Right.
think we should like stay tight to that and like
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
regular quarterly or something. We should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and
Okay.
then what are we?
And
gonna-
then we need to, right, we
Are we
need
gonna
to
have a
pick,
committee or are we just gonna have more discussion or
I
are we
think we
going
should-
to?
well,
Get
let's,
our
Rely-
new board
rely
members
on-
in. That should be maybe. an
yeah,
early
maybe
issue for the
after,
new
right,
board.
because we'll have that actually at our next meeting, yeah, on the 24th.
And
So we can have this.
Well, and also we're going to embark on a goal setting presumably
Yep.
as we segue into summertime. So I
Mhm.
think it should be a goal
Yeah.
of ours.
Yeah. All right.
And
Any,
that little letter to the state, now that we get David on board.
So I'll sign off. on that.
good thinking, Christine, get him on the record.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank
Nathan,
you very much.
yeah, sure. Nathan, any last comment on this
Uh,
topic?
Nope, not at all. I actually need to drop off.
Okay,
All right. Thank you
all
all.
right,
Bye-bye.
all right. Good night. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Jerry, Carrie. Thank you very much. Okay. See you, Travis.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead with the town administrator's report then.
Okay, well,
Highlighted my email.
well, the first thing I was going to talk about is the shared sustainability director. I see Eric Heiderman is on the call. I don't want to put Eric on the spot, but he is the assistant town manager in Westford.
Oh, hi, welcome, Eric. Yeah, come, you can certainly join this part of the conversation, even if you're just listening, but
But at any rate, Eric and I have been communicating back and forth about the position. If I recall correctly, we now have 5 applicants for the position. Westford is going to their town meeting June 11th and be adding the position to their pay and classification plan, which I don't suspect will be a problem. They've had ads in the MMA Beacon and the deadline just was passed. We just went by a week or so ago. So, we'll be moving forward. My intent would be to participate in the interviews. Probably the first round would probably be via Zoom. Hopefully the last round would be face to face. So we're moving ahead with that. Eric and I also were talking about, speaking of regionalization, I think I told the board about the sealer of weights and measures issue.
yes.
Well, I approached Westford and they're in the same boat as we are.
Oh.
They are losing, they had the state. I had actually set it up when I was town manager there for the state to do it, and the state is backing away from them. So we're all kind of
Hmm.
in the same boat. I
All
think they're gonna
looking.
have somebody trained on staff to do it, but it takes like a year. And we just have one scale, so I'm still
Yeah.
working on that one. But at any rate, so we're moving forward on the director position.
Eric, did you want to make any comment?
I don't think so.
Okay. Just a quick question,
Yeah.
so you're participating in the interviews and then
Right.
is there a group of Westford staff or Westford elected members or a
I
screening
don't
committee?
know how Westford's going to be doing it.
Ah, okay.
Eric and I did not discuss that.
Okay.
I assumed it might have been just maybe Eric and their HR director and me, but I could be wrong.
Oh, okay.
I was just wondering about people like Bob Zog.
Well,
and-
that's what I was gonna raise
Yeah.
too, whether, but maybe you feel you have a good handle on what we might be looking for, but I think
Oh, yeah.
Bob Zog or Jonathan DeCock, certainly Bob Zog would be able to, speak to very specifically some of the things that we could be doing in Carlisle.
Right, but I think that might be more of a final interview.
Uh-huh,
phase, I think.
okay.
So I don't know, Eric and I will
Fine.
discuss.
All right,
Um,
just want to keep that in mind
Right,
when you
right.
go through this process. I think
Right.
that would be useful to have that information.
Right, no,
Yeah.
I get that, right.
Okay.
Just want to let the board know, as you know, we had some complaints about Pheasant Hill Lane and the binder course is down. It's really nice and smooth and, the final paving and drainage improvements will be done in the summer going into fall. I did discuss with Madeline the position of the planner as opposed to the planning administrator. We are tentatively scheduling the planning board to come in and update us at the next meeting. And I told Madeline that she needs to have that discussion on the position with the select board. So
Good.
she'll be here on the 24th to discuss that.
Okay.
We did have a strategy. I mean, I know Nathan has signed off back on April 20th with our town council, our cable consultant as well, to talk about moving forward with Comcast. So we'll be reaching out to them to try to have another probably Zoom session over language. It merely is coming down to some language, and what Comcast has agreed to in some other communities, like on the Cape, is way different than what they've offered us. So, you know, we've got,
Better deal for the town?
not for us,
No, but
Better
Right.
for I mean, sorry,
better for the towns on the Cape than us.
yeah, that's right.
Right, right. I just want to make the board aware, we did receive notification from Benfield Farm. They're doing some HVAC duct and vent cleaning, which, you know, is important in multifamily housing. Yeah. And then I had a couple other matters that didn't make this. We did receive a correspondence from the Carlisle Poppy Project
yeah.
yesterday, no, 2 days ago, excuse me, looking for permission to do their kind of annual poppy display on the common near the junction of Concord and Westford Road. They said from mid-May to the 1st of June. So I think the board would need to grant that permission.
Yeah, so let's see, we need a motion then to approve the use of the common. Do we have any language in here, Steve? I forgot. No, it came in at the last minute.
Yeah, this is
Do you
very
have-
vague, right?
Yeah, do you have why don't we, can you sort of give us a
Well,
rough motion there, and let's see if we
There
can.
was no
Well-
sketch of the layout. They just a verbal description.
right. Well, I mean, they were going to have a design that says peace equals love, surrounded by poppies laid out in olive leaves, similar to that of the UN logo. It was going to be on the common.
Down near the street.
At the junction
inside.
of Concord and Westford Road, so it
Yeah.
would not interfere with the wreath lane on Memorial Day. And I bet it's all the specifics they sent.
Yeah,
to
And
us,
they've run it by FRS, I think, or have they? You don't mention that in
I'll
the
mention
letter.
that. I don't
Okay.
know.
So we could,
Hmm.
the
So we-
motion
Could
could
be
be
subject to running by.
subject to
FRS.
review by FRS, but so the motion would be, oh,
No,
Approve.
no,
no, I
you've got
don't.
something else up
I
there.
got
The motion
something.
would be to approve the use of the common,
for the
and what are the
poppies.
dates?
Well, they said mid-May
Mid-May
to June.
To June,
1st of June. yeah.
June 1st.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
a motion to approve the use of the common by the Poppy Project for mid-May through the 1st of June, pending
Approval.
approval by
Contingent, yeah,
FRS,
yeah.
or contingent on approval by FRS.
Because it's FRS's land.
Well, and yes, as well as us.
Yeah,
We jointly own it.
yeah.
Yes, another one of those real simple deals that.
Who's the
easy
approving
to-
authority at FRS? The board of FRS?
A board, I think, yeah.
Do
They don't call it
convene-
a board, but
They have
whatever
to
they
convene
call
a
it.
meeting then quickly because
Yeah,
mid-May's like next week, right?
No, I'm guessing Debbie has already done
I'm
that
sure,
with them,
yeah.
but she just doesn't mention. in the
So
letter.
moved.
second.
Any discussion?
No,
We're it.
yeah, I mean, I
Uh,
wish I, understood exactly what that design was gonna be, but so
Right,
what?
and we
you
just
know.
read the
Well, you know, they've done a
Debbie,
good job.
they
in the
have,
past, and
this is
it's-
exactly
it's
what I was
been
gonna
very
follow
well
up and say.
done.
Yeah, they have
Right,
in the
so
past done a very nice job.
I do have confidence that it'll be well done, and
Yeah.
so, all righty then.
I just had one other thing.
yes. Hold
we-
on, we got to
Oh,
vote,
excuse
so,
me, I thought you-
yeah, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries unanimously.
And we just received a notice from Mass DOT that we are going to be receiving $181,209 from the Winter Recovery Assistance Program,
Wow.
also known as RAP. And sorry about that. I can't help myself, David. I just can't help it.
Where did they get?
And we have to have the money
Oh,
spent by
goodness.
June 30, 2023, and it can be used for road reconstruction and striping and things like that. So
Great.
So this
Gary-
is,
Gary's
this
at
is
the-
some special appropriation?
based on bad winter, right? Right.
Okay.
I don't
Great.
remember it was a bad winter or not.
No,
It's like
It
a-
didn't
have
seem that
noticed-
bad, but
right now.
okay.
Hey, Steve, before we leave your report.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a town planner and a town planning administrator?
Oh, well, one actually plans.
So George was a PA?
No, yes, he was an administrator.
Who do we use as a planner?
We never had a planner.
So now we're gonna get a planner instead of a PA or?
Yes.
There's some of us here that would like one, yeah.
But not if we don't need a PA then? Or is
Well,
that a separate issue?
It would function, that'd be part of its function.
that would be part of the function, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Well, always good to have news of
Yeah,
money that we didn't know about.
yeah.
We've got
Okay.
A little over a year to spend it. so.
Okay, good.
Oh, That's
No,
all right. I'm sure we can.
Yeah.
I've
I
been
can-
enjoying, I enjoyed the new pavement on Acton Road today. So. that
Uh-huh.
was good.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did that drive the other day too. Yeah. Haven't been to Pheasant Hill Lane. I may have to take a trip over there, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right, great. And so then we have the May agenda proposal where, so we know already we need to put in some time here around the follow-up on regionalization. Now, you have, I think I'm still looking at the draft. I got my cord in the way, sorry. Yeah, so this,
This is the draft in the packet. Is what we're looking at.
Right.
yeah, so
You
we're not
mentioned
gonna,
It depends how.
Youth
long these things take.
Commission, will this
I-
have,
I think that's still gonna happen. The
okay,
Youth Commission and
and recreation?
Recom, but I guess we need to confirm that,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, actually, this is sort of a liaison report. I was with the Cub Scouts yesterday or the other, anyway, one of these evenings this week. And they were asking questions,
Oh, about how the board
how the
works.
board works and
Yeah.
things like, and one of the questions they had was, what happened to that report about the holes in Spalding Field? It's like,
Oh,
I
right.
don't know,
right.
so that would be one thing that I'd like to be sure that we not forget to ask the
The Cubs
Redcom.
themselves asked
The
that?
Cubs asked that, yes.
I'm impressed.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
think Holly will know what's
okay,
going on
well,
there,
anyway,
yeah.
so we definitely need to ask
Yeah.
them that. And,
I'm gonna, when we do the liaison reports, I'm gonna give
Okay.
everybody an update about Timbernook,
okay,
okay? So,
all right,
So
Um,
but since we're on this, is Timber Nook
yes,
on the agenda then?
Yes.
yes, it is at
I
8:05.
see it, but I mean,
Oh.
giving an
Oh.
update, it's
Oh.
still on. the agenda.
yes, I think, yes.
This
I'll
point,
I'll tell you momentarily,
Okay.
yeah, where we are, but, and then
The
I
planning
did talk to
board.
Madeline about
Yeah.
joint meeting with the planning board, thinking primarily about the master plan, and she wants to wait on the master
Okay.
plan because she has 3 new people coming onto the board and
Yeah.
she wants them to get up and running, but we could definitely have her come talk about the staff, the planner position.
But we might not need.
But we won't need, yeah,
time.
the time that we had here, so we can make that change when we meet on Friday.
So why do we have a town administrator report since our town administrator will be on vacation?
Maybe we might
That
draft
is the
something
re-
ahead
that
of
is the
time.
report.
That's my
Oh.
report. No, well, I am gonna be here till the 17th, so.
You
yeah,
gave him 10 minutes for his report.
That's right. And I'm not doing it remotely from Utah. My wife would kill me.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame her. Okay,
All
so.
right, so that, yeah, and I think, actually, let me just double check, because I thought I put something else on the, are we, we need to do we need to do this classification of the assistant assessor,
haven't-
right? So
remember
that's
that
a
came
minor
up.
thing,
That
but that
should be-
has to
that
go
should
on,
be-
on there.
that's right.
Yeah,
We'll put it early on.
yeah, okay.
Yes.
Are you,
And we should, I mean, I think at this meeting, unless you have more history than I do, Kate, on the turnover, when you have new people coming on the board, but would that be the meeting where we would vote around chair and vice chair?
we
Yeah,
have to, because I
okay.
think,
And then the
That brings in-
liaisons, we would wait and do that at
Yes.
a
A future
meeting
meeting.
afterwards. Yeah,
Absolutely.
but
okay.
that leads an interesting question, because, and I don't know from the select board, but like in the school board, the first meeting, the superintendent chairs it until they have the vote.
Mhm.
You're not there, so what happens?
Well,
in-
I think if if it would be,
We've always had the chair chair it
The
until
chair
his
chairs
vote.
it until
That's usually the way
but
it's
what if I'm not reelected?
well, then the vice
Well,
chair.
Then
would
it should
chair.
be the
vice chair.
vice chair, right?
I don't want to contemplate that, but okay.
Yeah.
Did you
Okay.
want to invite Luke and give him a little tribute or, because we didn't really do that today because he wasn't.
Right. Yeah, why don't I check in with Nathan about that? Just
Yeah,
he's
5 minutes. He
closer
could
to
just
him
show
and
up.
see if he, if he wants to be here, or
Yeah.
something. Okay. Great. All right, any other, yeah,
Yeah, so you have the staff position
and then we have the follow-up on the regionalization conversation.
and more
we need to add.
regionalization.
Yeah, and
And
then we're
Yeah,
gonna
if we
take
have time.
off the
And-
master plan implementation.
yes, but we will have that, we'll talk about that staff. Now, will Madeline be expecting to be able to, leave that meeting and post something or?
Well, we haven't graded it out yet. I think,
Oh, we haven't even.
I think she wanted to, she and I met on Friday. I think the discussion was to get the board on board with the
Right.
concept, and then we'd grade it and come back to you with a pay grade.
Okay, so as soon as we could see the description, the job description,
Pay grade now for the plan.
yes, that would be
Assessor,
helpful
assessor.
for us in our discussion, I'd say.
Yeah,
Well, she's got a draft.
knowing her, yeah, she'll have a
Yes.
Yeah.
job description.
It was
that-
just one
But I'd
minor
like to
Just
see
make
it
sure we have it in the
before the
pa- yeah.
Thursday before even.
So
you
is
know, I
gotcha.
mean,
she's seeking,
As
she
soon as
doesn't
she
need our
has it.
approval to approve, or does she?
Yes, she does, right.
It was just one minor
Yes.
tweak in the job description. I gotta circle back with her, because if you read it, you would think there's two positions.
Ah,
The
That's-
planning administrator plus the planner, so.
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, would you just pass along to her that even if she has it ready before our regular packet going out, it'd be helpful to see it.
Okay.
As soon as she has it.
She
even if
sent me
it's-
both job descriptions when she met with me, just to get me, more
Yeah.
familiar with the
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, let me tell you where things are with Timbernook. So since we had our last meeting, I had a follow-up conversation with her. I relayed what we discussed at our last meeting. I think tell me if I already told folks this, but that she really wanted to go ahead as an independent organization and get a license, get a camp license through the Board of Health, which can be done. She met with Linda Fantasia. And that then led to Steve looking at the question of if she were going to go that route, would we need to put out an RFP?
Oh, that's
And-
true. Yeah.
Right, and then that led us to, led him to talking to town council, and then town council said, why don't the four of us, Steve, me, Jenny, Merrill, and Tom, get on the phone together? So we did that. Was that just yesterday morning?
Monday, wasn't it? I don't know. It was the last couple of days. Sometime.
I think it was yesterday morning. It was
it was.
Tuesday morning, yeah, after
Days
town
run
meeting,
Together for me
or
lately.
whatever,
After-
Tuesday morning. Yeah, and so what came out of that was something completely different, which is also going to make this challenging to do the way Timbernook wants to, which is Jenny described a amendment, in the state constitution.
Anti-aid
It's
amendment.
an anti-aid amendment, which means that, we, as a town, we cannot be providing support either in terms of money or resources, or in this case, land, with no,
Private entity.
with what?
For a private
For
entity.
private
Yeah, for a
entities.
private entity. And
No continuation.
so what we've, what we've been doing for the last couple of years has really not been appropriate. Yeah. Yeah, but certainly going forward, given the
Yes,
size and that it's clearly a camp.
Yes.
So I got on the phone with Sherry yesterday afternoon, explained this to her. And so I said, you're the only option that we as a town, because I felt, given our
It's
select
not
board
personal.
conversation and also town councils, I said, the only way you'll be able to go forward with this if you have it sponsored by the recreation department. And so then I checked in with Holly, and Steve had also offered to join a conversation where if Sherry wants to still pursue this, and she wants to try to look at what kind of an agreement might be possible with the recreation department, given Timbernook's particular situation where the registrations have to go through national and the way we typically do our programming, that Holly's willing to do that, and Steve was, and myself. And so Sherry said, yes, she would like to do that, you know, basically try for one last time to see if there's a way to work this out. So Sherry's going out of town, Holly's going out of town, so I've got a couple of dates for next week that are possibilities. So I was clear with Sherry that that needs to be decided first. If there's an avenue there that works for both Timbernook and us, then we could move ahead on that. But until we know if that's even a possibility, there's no point in continuing to think about where the camp might be located. And I just want to flag, which I told Sherry, which she's aware of. I said, if we can't work something out, then we're going to have to, as a select board, have the conversation about what about this summer, right? And it's going to be
that one right now.
well, I just think we have to revisit it and be sure about what
So-
we're going
so
to
your-
do, the
your
outcome.
Reccom administration piece was not about this one, because I thought Holly said she couldn't get it done by this summer.
Well, the question is, since they've already done all their registration,
There's no point
that, well,
this summer.
could Holly, she could still offer it as a program, but
And
work
it'd
has
be a
been done.
field project.
but basically there's only space left in a few places,
Right.
and the registration and the other paperwork would still be done by Timbernook. And then it would be going forward, how it might get
But that
integrated more.
Reccom wouldn't take a cut in this summer's.
That's to be discussed.
this one
That's
was
to be
around.
discussed. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
So that's what the conversation will be
So,
next week.
Let me try to summarize what I think I heard. So if there's a willingness by both parties to make it work after the summer, and whatever window dressing is about this summer,
Right.
then part of that package is they get to stay this summer with whatever rules we impose. Is that understood, or is it implied or not?
Well, the clear message from the select board the last time we talked about this was they can't stay on their current site for this summer. You remember?
Right.
So no matter what goes
so
on
now-
with Reccom, we got.
If they can work out something with Reccom, we have to figure out another location or we as the select board revisit the question of, okay, would we let them stay there this summer? They're now going through our recreation department, and then they pursue another
I'm
location.
still a little confused, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to map
Okay.
it in my mind. If you first have the conversation about pairing up with Reccom, and
Right.
if that's a non-starter, so you
Then
can't
we're
reach an
done.
agreement, that means we're done this summer? we're
Well,
done, period,
I
or
think
the summer
we-
still sits there as a question.
Well,
The
we
current
didn't
summer.
actually vote on, at our last conversation, it was just very clear from the discussion we had that there was agreement on the select board that we didn't want them, well,
Yeah,
let's
but-
put it this way.
Let me just.
We wanted them, we didn't want them on the site this summer. We wanted them to move. However, if you'll recall, you and I were more flexible about having them stay there for the summer, but we
That's
were in the.
before we knew about this anti-aid thing, and I
Right.
don't think we can.
Okay.
I think we really just can't,
Okay.
and
Well,
so
they could if they
again-
go through recreation department.
Wait, no,
That's
but let's-
fine,
That's
but
what I'm
if-
saying.
if
They
they
could-
don't.
No,
then
no,
it's-
no, that's
then
not the question. David's asking a
Yeah,
different
I'm trying
question.
to step through.
If we worked,
the decision tree.
if we came up with, if there was some agreement with recreation, that they would sponsor this program.
Yes.
So then we have option A. They can still run the camp on this same site, but they have to
One.
find a new location. after the summer, or B,
You gotta find a
they
new
got to
location.
find a new
I think
location
it's-
right away.
Okay.
If we can't work out something with rec department, Timbernook and rec can't work something out, then the discussion for us, right, we have to say,
I'll
sorry, our
withdraw.
hands are tied,
So
you're
no,
gonna have to
nothing.
move the,
Nothing.
right,
Out of
because,
Carlisle, move out of Carlisle.
Yeah.
yep, you're gonna have to
Okay.
move out of
So we-
Carlisle.
there's no, that's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah,
There's no scenario that says you can't reach agreement with Reccom and you can't stay in our backyard here, but we'll help you somewhere in Carlisle for a season. You're saying that's a non-starter.
That's a
because of this
non-starter.
anti-aid
that's
and
okay.
amendment,
That's
which
fine,
that,
that's
which
fine.
is new information,
No, no,
you
it's
know,
fair
right?
enough, fair
That,
enough. So it's clarified now.
yes,
So as you said, you have to reach agreement with Reccom. It
And
has
if
to
you
be a
do-
multi-year agreement. And and the fee of this summer would have to be negotiated, because some of the work has been done, so. But still, it would be in the Reccom booklet and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And then we could decide about that. Okay. So that's really the only path forward.
yep,
It's the only way.
yep.
So she has a bias to try to negotiate, I mean. actually,
Well,
good
an
for us 'cause we have
incentive.
some leverage.
Well,
Yeah.
A, but B, it's also, it's not a personal thing. It's.
No,
that,
it's
you know,
just
we
legally-
mistakenly
Right.
Made this, of course, we also really didn't know what we were getting into.
Well, we thought it was one thing, right?
Yes.
That we approved, which it was initially, and then the
Right.
growth.
But
we
is
didn't-
the
Yeah.
site in your backyard a viable? Is that a viable alternative?
When you're
Well,
Yeah, your backyard. instead of
Yeah,
down on the
um,
I mean, I went over there yesterday to just see the DPW facility and the way Gary describes it, there is so much foot traffic through the DPW site. He's just worried about liability, heavy
Of course, we're
equipment.
not gonna find a site anyway.
Yeah,
Because didn't we conclude Banta was no good? There was some reason. right?
well, Banta has some possibilities, when Sherry and Holly, I walked over there, but nothing is, from Timbernook standpoint, nothing as useful or appropriate as the potential of that site over there by the DPW. But I don't even think we should continue the discussion
I
with the
agree.
DPW till we know whether,
Right, okay.
So
So
it's in or
It's
not.
truly unfortunate. I mean, I really am not
yes,
pleased
yes.
with the outcome here.
well, again,
but,
we didn't
um,
do our job.
Right,
Basically.
right.
I mean, that's.
And
the-
they
I'm-
didn't either,
They didn't either, and so,
right.
but the problem is, because they didn't do their job and we didn't do our job, the parents of kids lose out. I mean,
Yes.
that's the part that I don't
Right.
like.
Nah, nope, I
is
don't
we
either.
made- Our mistake is now their problem,
Right.
which is not a good thing.
Right.
So I wonder still if there's a way to hold your nose, and, I mean, we violated the law for a couple of years. If we have a path forward that, I don't know, it's a legal question, but if we get
Yeah.
out from under,
Yeah,
you know, you
Yeah.
can hand wave it for a year. Okay, very good.
so
Thank you.
to be continued.
Yep.
Um,
Alright.
oh, and the only other little thing, well, not so little to the complainant, but the barking dog order did go out today.
Okay.
Oh,
um,
okay.
Because we actually got a note from the complainant, saying the barking was
It
continuing.
was complete.
which-
Oh.
Because, but I think I know she was under the misapprehension that the owners had been notified like the next day, something had happened where they were told about the order, but between Jenny being on vacation and then some miscommunication back and forth, we
It
didn't
went
get
out
the
to-
order, signed
I
and
mean,
out
I
till
run
today.
by that property with my dogs a lot, and I'm now hypersensitive.
Aware of the dogs.
I haven't heard-
Yeah.
I used to hear them, and I haven't heard of people, so I
Huh.
thought it was getting better, I guess, just from my,
I
anecdotal.
drove by one day just to see, and the
Well,
dogs were out.
yeah, and I see people. out
And were they
there, too.
barking?
Not when
No.
they're out with their owners,
They
not
were-
when happy as clams.
Ah.
It's- I'm telling you. But anyway, okay.
Yeah, all right, so that's done, and let's, the warrants are in here that I signed off on.
Yes,
There's
thank
nothing
you.
really unusual, I don't think, but if you
I
have
did look
questions
at it.
about something,
Let's see what the
Uh,
drunken sailor spent her money on this.
yeah,
week.
Yes,
It's,
the
uh,
wheel liberator, I'll
page
tell you.
90. Yeah, there's our transfer station.
I did read all these, and
Yeah,
nothing jumped out as saying, gee,
No.
why did we?
by the way, it just reminded me, is it May 1 or June 1 that the CARES money has been extended to cover our COVID testing? Do you remember?
It was June.
I think it's June.
June.
It
So,
Covers this month.
So we've got to address that question then,
Yes,
right?
I'm
That
still
needs
wearing
to
my
be
mask.
on the 24th about, yeah, about whether the town is going to pick up the cost of that or not.
Testing. PCR
Well,
testing.
if you look at here, we just spent 5,000
Some detail I don't have. or
for
is it-
COVID testing. No, did you look at the, yeah, there's a,
Oh, yeah.
go
5K
above
Pro
those,
EMS,
David, go up,
Right, I'll
there's
find
a
it. Yep.
summary.
There's a summary. okay.
97. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's got to go up to the,
Yeah.
All right, I'll do it. You keep going. Don't
Yeah.
hold it up.
it should be coming up.
There we
right
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And a little
So
further.
that's what reminded me, the 5,000 for COVID testing. I mean, what I can, or maybe Steve, you could do this, is reach out to Chief Soros and have him provide us with an update about what's happened.
What period is the 5,000 cover?
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably the last month of
I
it.
didn't ask when,
I mean,
the
I know
period
he's
is
still
covered.
having a lot of, after, I mean, I could see in my office.
Yeah,
a lot of-
no,
a
it's,
lot of
it's,
action over
it's
it.
an incredibly valuable and valued service. so
Yeah.
but it's gonna, I mean, it's
gonna cost
it's
money.
not something we have in the budget. So
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
we have to
Yeah.
address
Yeah.
that.
It also, then
No,
I
you could-
also
within
saw,
inside You could charge, sorry, just, we
Yeah.
had talked about having people probably wouldn't mind
Paying for it?
paying for it, just they like the convenience. It's not, that my impression is. most
Yeah,
people-
and
Yeah.
that's something we could
Sorry, go
also
ahead.
be an option. Yeah. What did you want to ask about,
well,
Kate?
I was going to just say that the 5,000 for the Morgan Records and the Planning Department ARPA project reminds me that, we're waiting at ARPA. I'll do my liaison report.
Okay, good.
For more applications, I suggested to Steve that there, there's been, I've gotten input that various committees want more IT, so more equipment for when they're doing, Zoom meetings and hybrid meetings and fitting up the conference rooms. And this would be something that I thought, we should maybe be shepherding through ARPA.
ARPA. And have you, I can't remember, Steve, if we talked about what Minuteman was
Right, we-
proposing
it's
about updating our whole
well,
setup
but it's
here.
not just this setup, there's a thing called the owl that.
The owl.
would
Yes,
sit on,
which,
and that is
Madeline
portable.
Blake is very
and could,
excited,
like,
right?
So the price that,
Shows it frames the speaker.
Right, right, but it's also portable, so you could move it to another
Yeah,
room if you
yeah.
wanted to. But yeah, the whole cost of all the upgrades was 30,000. No, so opera could be, I guess, opera could be a good source.
That's an ARPA expense.
Yeah. So, I mean, the main issue with that is we would definitely have to put out an RFP or a bid, and because everything that was sent to me from Minuteman is brand name kind of thing, so you have to figure out how to do that generically. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
Well, we
Yeah,
just,
well,
we
after
just
you
went
come
through.
back
that
from
work, we ordered
vacation.
some
So could we do the RFP before we know whether, yeah, we could go ahead and do the RFP to figure out what the bids are, right? And then we
Yeah.
could
Then we
submit
could
a request
Yes.
to ARPA.
But you'd want to spec out what you actually want. You probably want somebody.
We know what
Well,
we want.
we have it
Minuteman has
spec'd
given
out.
us the
We have it
specs.
spec'd out.
good.
Yeah.
I guess my other question is, and that would be a discussion with Minuteman, is because they're technically a part of the Concord government. I mean, they
Mhm.
must have acquired a lot of their equipment through the competitive process, so maybe they have that stuff.
We should
Maybe they-
check it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just on ARPA then, is it sort of roll-in
At this point,
admissions?
we said, yeah, we'll just start doing rolling. and-
Okay,
And it's been crickets, but because we kind of did that big one and we're still waiting for some of these big infrastructure
yeah.
things to happen too, and the one big one that we already kind of said, okay, was not purchased under federal guidelines. And it was purchased under state guidelines, and so it doesn't qualify for the
Oh,
ARPA.
geez.
So,
Yeah, and that could be a problem with this equipment too, that Kelly, the town accountant and we've signed up for a webinar about all this type of stuff with ARPA.
Huh.
I think it's middle of June, if memory serves me.
So-
Yeah.
okay.
If you
If
bought
you
something under
give me the link, I'll
state
go to-
guidelines And it didn't, if it complied with federal, it doesn't really matter.
That's
right?
correct,
It's
but-
only if it didn't.
Right, and they
So
didn't.
There was some.
Ugh,
Yeah, nobody knew that.
We did it before ARPA even was
Right.
on the
Oh, okay,
horizon.
so you can't reach back. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
We'll use it
I
for
mean,
something else. It doesn't-
yeah, we
it's
will,
not-
but. it
Yeah.
just-
You know, I think it would be good though, if maybe Scott would be willing to write a letter to the editor or something, but to put it out there to the town in general, or maybe it's just a notice to boards and committees that
We
You're-
actually did. We sent everything out again.
to boards and
Yeah.
committees.
Yeah, to everywhere
Okay.
that we had before, to say
Yeah.
that we're now gonna go rolling, you know,
Yeah. So just send us an application if you have
Yeah.
something you're considering.
Yeah.
Okay. I,
but, I think this application for the IT has to come from us, so that's why I'm
Yes.
bringing it up.
got
here.
it. Okay.
How you know to follow federal purchasing.
Yes. Even if it costs you more, it'll
course it'll
cost you
cost you
less.
more, of course.
Well, but the thing is that then it'll get reimbursed. If we
Right, no,
don't,
Right.
then we have to pay
Right,
for it.
right.
And we
Yeah.
have this money that's sitting in our bank account that we'll have to give them back if we don't spend it. So,
Yeah, we don't want to
Uh,
do that. Yeah, okay. Anything else on liaison reports? All right, I think we're ready to end our meeting then. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
so move.
Second.
All right, well, thank you. Our little hard working threesome here.
Well,
But next time we will have, yeah,
Nathan
and
was
good
there.
Nathan joined us for the regionalization discussion. Yeah, that was
Um,
good.
So before we. part,
Thanks
I
for
wa-
being here.
Thank
I
you.
thought we had put this small group meeting. I thought we had.
We're
Good.
done. Wait, we
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
vote.
all in
Hang on.
favor.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So the meeting is
Turn this
ended and
off.
you can stop the recording. Arcady.